Good afternoon, everybody. I'll call the special recommending committee meeting of July 26, 2006 to order. These proceedings are being presented live on KCLV Cable Channel 2 and are closed captioned for our hearing impaired viewers. The special recommending committee meeting, as well as all other KCLV programming, can be viewed on the internet at www.kclv.tv. The proceedings will be rebroadcast on KCLV Channel 2 and the web on Thursday at 6 a.m. and also on Friday at 7 p.m. and Sunday at 4 p.m. Madam Clerk, are we in compliance with the open meeting law?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. I'll read Bill number 2006-38 into the record. Bill number 2006-38 adjusts the ward boundaries of the city. This is proposed by Brad Jervik, our city attorney. Mr. Jervik, I'd like you to give us a brief summary as to how we got to the matter that we're hearing today.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, members of council. As you're aware, from time to time this council decides to redistrict the city based on lopsided wards, for want of a better term.
I'm advised that you should be, folks, when you come up and address us, please go up to the middle of the podium. Apparently that's the way the microphones have been set up, and we'll be able to hear you from there. If you need any further audibility, so to speak, we'll present you with a handheld mic. Mr. Jervik, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Your Honor. My apologies. I did not know we were using different microphones now. From time to time, the city engages in the process of redistricting the wards because just by the nature of the growth of the city and where the growth occurs, the wards become lopsided. This is about the fourth or fifth redistricting I've been through. Most of them have been because of disparity in population between wards. One redistricting is because it was mandatory by the charter, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And one was mandated because the legislature increased the size of this council from 4 wards to 6 wards. Let's turn our attention for a moment. If we go to the overhead, I have printed section 1.130 of the city charter, which talks about wards, creations, and boundaries. This is just the relevant part that I printed. One, it reads, the wards must be nearly equal in population as...
The wards must be as
nearly equal in population as can conveniently be provided, and the territory which comprises each ward must be contiguous. That's a general rule. Then we go on to when do you have to do it, and where is that rule? That's part 2 of 1.130. The boundaries of the wards must be established and changed by ordinance. That's what you have before you today. The boundaries of the wards must be changed whenever the population, as determined by the last preceding national census of the Bureau of the Census of the United States Department of Commerce, and any ward exceeds the population of any other ward by more than 5%. The boundaries of the wards may be changed to include territory which has been annexed, and whenever the population in any ward exceeds the population in any other ward by more than 5%, by a measure which is found reliable by the City Council. Translating that into English, every time we have a census, if the wards are off by more than 5%, you have to redistrict. In between census years, if the wards are off by more than 5%, you may redistrict. That's why we're here today. This council gave direction to staff over 6 months ago that you wish to begin the permissible redistricting provided by 1.130. The wards are off by more than 5%, and it's largely because of growth in the Northwest, as we all know. We'll present a copy of the current ward configuration in a moment and go through those numbers. But the next part of it is, if you're going to engage in a permissible redistricting, that must be by any measure which is found reliable by the City Council. If required today, Tom Paragon and Andrew Powell, our demographers, are in the audience. They are the individuals who worked with the 2001 or the 2000 census numbers and arrived at the population numbers that we use today. I think my office can say right now, and Judge Kessler will say in a moment, that we believe these numbers to be reliable, both as a measure of population in the city and as a measure of ethnic breakdown. Sometime after the council asked us to go forward with redistricting, we presented the council with a contract to engage the services of retired Judge Fred Kessler. Every redistricting we've done since I have been here has been with the aid of Judge Kessler. Judge Kessler's credentials, I think, speak for themselves. He is an expert in redistricting. He's very familiar with one man, one vote and all the legislation that accompanies redistricting, and he has been able, through his wisdom, guide us through some of the areas where we shouldn't go during the course of redistricting. The first thing we did, after telling the council members that the process had begun, was provide everybody with numbers. The numbers that we provided were both numbers for your wards, numbers for the precincts within the wards, and an ethnic breakdown of the people that lived in those precincts. The initial maps were generated in March of this year, and they were maps to get the process rolling. After March of this year, it was discovered by Judge Kessler and our demographer that there would be a better way of calculating ethnic breakdowns in the wards. I received a memo from from Andrew Powell regarding the method that they used. I'd like to file it with the clerk at this time so it becomes part of the record. The reason I'm doing that is that when the first maps came out, they had a breakdown as to ethnicity up in the upper corner that you see on these maps, and those ethnic breakdowns changed as a result of the methodology they employed. You can read a note in the letter that they wrote that Planning and Development updated the 2000 census data using information from the Nevada State Health Division on births, deaths, and historical migration patterns. So by looking at actual birth rates amongst Hispanics, amongst African Americans, amongst other ethnic groups, and applying those and migration patterns to the 2000 data, they arrived at numbers that I think they will tell you today are reliable and should be relied on by the council. Those numbers then became the numbers that were used for all other maps that were produced as a part of this redistricting process. Those maps resulted in map number 17, which is the final recommended proposal by Judge Kessler today. If I could just, for a moment, with the overhead still on, show you where we started. This is a map of the wards as currently configured in the city of Las Vegas. I don't know if you can read the language at the top, it's not really necessary, but it gives the ward populations, it gives the percentage of white, black, Hispanic, and other with respect to ethnic breakdown. And what it clearly shows is that Ward 6, to nobody's surprise, is 128,872 people large, and the smallest ward, Ward 1, is 80,801 people large. This is a difference, obviously, much more than 5%, creates quite a disparity, not only in workload between council members, but has created a request from Councilman Ross, I'll let him speak in a moment about that we take a serious look at redistributing the population to make this, as the ordinance of the charter requires, as nearly equal as possible. Turning to the map for a moment, and I'll just use my finger to point, the top of the map, for want of a better way to put it, it's shaded in brown, is Councilman Ross's ward. This is the ward that contains 128,872 people, clearly the largest ward by almost 30,000 people in the city of Las Vegas. Again, about a 30% difference between ward population, and between the smallest and the largest, even more than 30%. It's axiomatic that this redistricting process begins with the simple concept, Councilman Ross's ward needs to be reduced. And so that's where this process began. If you look at the numbers that we have today, that would put everybody's ward numbers somewhere in the low 90s to maybe 100,000, and that if they were in that range, they would be within 10%, which Judge Kessler will talk about as mandated under the one-man, one-vote requirement, and would be within what our charter requires. So that meant, literally, that the south half of Councilman Ross's ward was going to have to come off at some point and be distributed amongst the remaining 5 wards. That also meant that certain other things were true. Starting with Councilman Reese's ward, which is shaded in blue, which is on the far east end of the city, if Councilman Reese is going to receive new people, just as everybody is going to receive new population, he is naturally going to grow to the west. It's axiomatic that that is true. That means that he is going to grow to the northwest, or he's going to grow to the southwest, but he's going to grow to the west. In the proposed redistricting map that will be proposed by Judge Kessler, you're going to see that Councilman Reese's ward grows predominantly to the southwest, not the northwest. Judge Kessler is going to tell you that one of the reasons that happened is not just by request of the council member, but the consequences of what happens when you move one area of the city to another area of the city, and what happens to the ethnic breakdown. In this particular case, Councilman Reese's ward would either eat into Councilwoman Tarkarian's ward, and that has a separate ethnic breakdown than the ward currently represented by Councilman Weekly, which would also change its ethnic breakdown if he were to move to the northwest. After that is established, it's also true that every ward in the city is going to change as a result of this redistricting. It's going to end up in people representing people that they did not represent before, and they're more likely losing some people that they had represented in the past. And it's with that spirit that we began the process, and we are here today to present you with what I believe is Fred Kessler's recommended map.
Jervik, how many maps were prepared between the original map and the map that is before us for consideration as the ordinance?
17 in total, Your Honor, this 17 being the final map that Judge Kessler is recommending.
And when the maps are prepared, they're prepared by whom?
They are physically printed and prepared by Tom Perigo, our demographer, and the numbers submitted to him are submitted by Judge Kessler or by members of council who wish to see visually what a proposed change might look like.
Are all of these maps distributed to each council member as they're prepared?
They were distributed, depending on who requested them. If a member individual at one point in time said, I want to see a map of just by ward if it looks like this, they would probably be the only person that got that map. But prior to today's hearing, Your Honor, there was a request for all the maps, and over probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, all maps were distributed to everybody so everybody could see the whole process, even if it didn't involve them or their ward.
And could see how the process evolved.
Exactly.
The maps are dated?
The maps are dated. I will point out for the record, and I think it might not be a bad idea for me to take all of those maps, which I hold in my hand at this time. This is plans 1 through 17. And let me just state that when I say plans 1 through 17, that doesn't necessarily mean that any one of these was on the table as a recommendation at any point in time. This is a work in progress. This is a fabric being sewn. And sometimes you put a piece here and it moves a piece here. So some of these might be more attractive to any member of council. There might be something more preferable than the final version. That's fine, and that's why you're here today to discuss it. But the fact is, I don't want anybody to think that because it said plan, that at any point in time, any one of these was proposed as the final plan or as the end plan. The other thing I want to point out is what I said before.
Could I please ask a question? Even though that wasn't presented as a plan, as he presented the maps to us, these were thoughts that he had along the line that could be utilized for this redistricting.
Absolutely, that's absolutely
So
true.
each one of those 16 maps were thoughts that he had that this map could do it if the members agreed to it.
I think that's correct. I think that's
my
correct.
understanding. Thank you.
I think that's correct. I don't know of any of these maps that doesn't meet the criteria that I outlined at the beginning as meeting the charter requirements. They will reflect, however, a map might come out of a discussion between 2 council members whose wards abut, but not 2 other council members whose wards abut. And because it's like a balloon, when you squeeze out it here, it bulges out here, every person's request has an effect on every other person's request. And that's why this evolutionary process took, I think, several maps. But I think I can state, and Judge Kessler will correct me if I'm wrong, that any one of them could technically be a viable map with respect to meeting the ordinance requirements. But with respect to consequences, each one of them is different. Each one of them will have a different consequence on ethnic breakdown. It'll have a different consequence as to the geography of your ward historically, what you represented in the past, what you haven't. And to a certain extent, every map does take into consideration, and I think it goes without saying, where you live, because the one thing we don't do is redistrict you out of your ward. But in any case, the other thing I want to put on the record, as I said before, the plans that I'm going to hand to Ronnie right now and ask to be filed with the clerk, plans 1 through 3 have got current ethnic breakdown numbers. That is not the ethnic breakdown that appeared on those maps when they were first generated back in March. And that's just a function of the way the computer works. When these maps were reprinted a few weeks ago, the computer automatically put in the new data. And so it reflects the numbers that should have been reflected all along. But I will state for the record, the first 3 maps, 1 through 3, had a definite ethnic breakdown, and it was because we didn't have the right formula. That brings us to the map that we have before you today. I'll let Judge Kessler join me here at the podium as we kind of go through this right now and explain exactly what it reflects. But if I could just read into the record before coming to Judge Kessler, if this map is adopted by council, Ward 1 would have a population of 93,154, Ward 2, 94,182, Ward 3, 100,512, Ward 4, 94,892, Ward 5, 96,654, and Ward 6, much to your happiness, I think, Councilman, would drop from 123,000 to 96,579.
128,872 down to. You advised us earlier that Ward 6 has...
Oh, I'm sorry, 128,872. I'm sorry, 128,872 to 56,579.
What is it proposed on this ordinance map?
The proposed new Ward 6 will be 96,579.
517. All right, thank you.
Very good. Now, with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. If not, I'll be glad to turn it over to Judge Kessler at this
All right,
point.
fine. Are there any questions by the council of Mr. Jurbic at this time? All right, thank you very much for that presentation. It was a good overview. And Judge Kessler?
Well, first let me thank the members of the council for selecting me again. I believe this is the 6th time that I have worked with the city on assisting drawing maps. It's an honor to be selected, and I have to say I've enjoyed the opportunity to work with the members and to meet and become acquainted with all of the members. I'm impressed with the quality of the elected officials and the quality of government in Las Vegas. I also want to particularly thank City Attorney Jurbic. It's been a great pleasure to work with him. I am an admirer of his, and I think he is a absolutely skillful city attorney, and I think the city is fortunate to have him. I also want to go out of my way to say that there are 2 people who have been tremendously helpful to me that I want to thank, and that's Tom Perigo and Andrew Powell in the Department of Development and Planning. They have been yeomen in their services, coming early, working late, and helping me, making sure that we got all the accurate data. And up to the very, I think yesterday, we're working very hard and working overtime to make sure we had everything that all of us wanted and all the council members wanted. This is an impressive city. I have to tell you that. It's the fastest growing major city in the United States, and that compels frequent redistricting. And unfortunately, for the way things go, all that population growth is in Councilman Ross and Councilman Wolfson's ward, somewhat in Councilman Brown's ward, and it's not sort of evenly distributed the way it is in some of the other cities that haven't got fixed boundaries on the east and the south, and that certainly makes it necessary that we continue to move every different every different time we redistrict, continue to move west and north in shifting all the wards of the city. There's one other thing that I always like to mention. It's very impressive that Las Vegas is probably the most integrated city in the United States. That's an extremely impressive thing. It has an impact on redistricting, but there is not a single council district that doesn't have at least 6% African American in a community in which we are talking an African American percentage of nearly close to 10%. When I drafted this map, which I'm recommending, I took into consideration 5 factors. The first factor was, of course, population equality. That's clearly mandated by all the federal court cases and mandated, of course, by the ordinances and the laws of the state of Nevada. The Supreme Court has dealt with the issue of what deviations are allowed in municipal and local government, and they have settled on and consistently said a 10% deviation is allowable in the overwhelming number of cases. There's probably some situations where exceptions have been created, but they are very minor, and there usually has to be substantial circumstances to justify that. So 10% becomes the outside limit of a deviation, and what we have in this plan is a high deviation of 4.7% with 100,512 and a low deviation of 3.9% with the 93,154. That falls within the parameters that the Supreme Court allows. I also took into consideration the requirement of contiguity, and which I interpreted also to include compactness. Certainly, no boundaries are ever absolutely perfect because of the equality of population requirements, but I am satisfied that these clearly would withstand any challenge on compactness or contiguity.
Yes, Councilman Wilson.
Judge Kessler, I know what contiguity means. I think most people do. Why don't you define that for us and define compactness for us, please?
Contiguity basically is that things have to be connected in some way geographically. You can't have an island of in one ward that's not physically connected to another part of the city where there's another ward intervening. So that's what contiguity is. And compactness is, there's generally a feeling that the districts should be reasonably squared or rectangle, or unless there's some justification. But I have to tell you that the only time courts have ever overturned redistricting maps because of compactness have been when there has been a racial impact on that. So in the 2000 census, several districts, congressional districts in Texas, in Houston, and in Dallas were overturned and set aside by court decisions because they attempted to reach in very unusual shapes to connect Hispanic or black precincts in order to create black majority or Hispanic majority districts. But I have to tell you, I wished I had brought those maps to show you. It looks like a Rorschach blob. But I also have to say in the city of Chicago, the courts didn't overturn a map that connected two distinct Hispanic communities, one on the south side of Chicago and one on the north side, by a long, narrow, one-block strip that extended about 2 miles just to connect the two to avoid going through the middle of an African-American majority district. So compactness usually isn't something that's going to be successfully challenged in a court unless there is some effort to have a racial component that's been violated as a result of that. The third criteria that I took into consideration were the requirements under the Voting Rights Act. Now, the Voting Rights Act basically says as follows: there are certain minority groups specifically statutorily mentioned that are protected groups because they have historically been discriminated against. Hispanics, African Americans, Native Americans, and in some cases, Asians. Those groups have been specified in the Voting Rights Act, and it's just been renewed this last week in the Congress or the House of Representatives, and the President has said he will sign it. So it's going to continue to be the law, and it's been the law since the 60s when demonstrations persuaded President Johnson to sign the Voting Rights Act into law. That basically says that if there is areas that are reasonably compact that contain a minority community, that minority community ought to be entitled to a proportionate representation in the city as a whole. And so we're talking in terms of minority communities here, that certainly when one aggregates together the African American and the Hispanic community, that justifies that 2 of the 6 council districts ought to be minority majority districts. And we have tried to make sure that there is minority and majority districts, and since it is possible to create a Hispanic majority district, we created a Hispanic majority district in Councilman Reese's automatic district, or council district. There's a second district, Councilman Wheatley's district, where the combined African American and Hispanic community provides close to 65% of the total population. And I believe the Voting Rights Act mandates us to do that. And I think it is particularly important to keep the African American proportion of that community together, and we have tried to do that to the best that we could, because I think that in the African American community you have a high percentage of citizenship, and you have a relatively high voting population. The third part of the Voting Rights Act that's important is the sort of fundamental reason for doing it. The court cases have basically evolved to the point that the candidate of choice of the minority community ought to have a reasonable chance of getting elected, and that becomes the underpinning for saying that these minority and majority districts must be created or must be preserved. That was just affirmed again in the U.S. Supreme Court decision on the Texas congressional redistricting, in which the court set aside the 23rd congressional district in western San Antonio and in the western part of Texas, and basically said The candidate of choice of the Hispanic community, who happened to be a non-Hispanic running against a Hispanic, was defeated because of the map that they made, and they said that's not fair. And they set aside the congressional district map in Congressman Bonilla's district. So we wanted to make sure that the opportunities for the candidates of choice of the minority communities are reasonable and are protected in this proposal. The plan that I recommended, I believe, meets all the voting rights factors. And I have to say also, those factors limited the direction in which we could go in some of the words, on some of the word lines that we did, particularly the direction in Councilman Reese's district. We were looking to make sure that both Councilman Reese's district and Councilman Weakley's district maintained that majority, and that necessitated that we moved in certain directions and limited our ability to move in other directions. There are two other factors that I considered that were unique to Las Vegas. The first is the Fremont Street divide. Traditionally, it's been the view in this community that downtown ought to have 2 council members. And I decided that I would certainly try to continue to follow that tradition, and that is certainly everybody I talk to strongly believes in that. So Fremont Street became a dividing line between 2 council districts so that downtown has at least 2 members of the council representing it. And the final 5th factor that I took into consideration was a factor that stalled us when we last attempted to do redistricting, and that was the inability that we have and the concern that people have that no area go 6 years without the opportunity to vote for council. That every part of the city ought to have an opportunity to vote every 4 years, and no citizen ought to be denied and compelled to go 6 years without the chance to vote for a council person. That did not play a big role this time. It played a minor role, but it certainly will play a bigger role if there's a redistricting occurring in the next 2 or 3 years, because of the fact that all the even-numbered districts are located in one part of town and all the odd-numbered are located in the other part of the community. I did not consider projected growth. Projected growth was something that, given the rapidity of population increases and the geographic concentration of the population increases, it would have been almost impossible to try to say we can avoid a redistricting if we consider projected growth. You just can't underpopulate Councilman Ross's district that substantially that it would have survived 4 years, 5 years, without again being more than 5% out of line and in violation of the ordinance. So that was not a consideration. The other thing that what I had is I looked at certain goals and the process to reach those type of goals. The number one goal I had was to try to see if I could present to you a legally sufficient map that could be adopted unanimously by the council. And I want to say I made substantial efforts and prepared a number of maps with that as a goal. 17 of those maps were published, and I believe most of the members of the council saw all or almost all of those maps. I probably had another 30 maps that I didn't bother to even print because I would always find something that would be too substantial a barrier, and so I didn't even bother to do that. The steps in the process, of course, that we go through are we seek to have input from the council members, and we seek to have input from the citizens. And certainly I see a crowd of citizens here, and they're, I'm sure, prepared to give their input. And I know that 2 years ago, citizen input was very important in determining whether or not we went ahead with a redistricting at that time. I tried to offer the alternatives by preparing the 17 maps and the other maps. And then I frankly tried to act as a mediator and a facilitator. Many of you know that my real occupation is that of being a labor arbitrator mediator. And I was hoping I could mediate that, and from what I understand, unfortunately, I wasn't as successful as I wanted to be. I certainly want to say that probably during the course of this process, every member of the council at one point or the other was angry with me, and was angry at the map that I took to their office, because that's just the way it is. But I know that people got together and tried to work it out. But I realize the ultimate mediation that occurs has to occur on a one-on-one basis between the members of the council. And I think that most of the decisions that were made when I offered maps that people didn't like, they got together and tried to see if they could work that out with some of their colleagues. I am satisfied this map meets all the legal requirements. I'm satisfied it ensures fair representation for the citizens of Nevada, and I recommend that you adopt it. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Are there any questions of Judge Kessler at this time? Are there any questions of Judge Kessler at this time?
I have one quick question.
All right, Councilman Wilson.
Thank you, President. Judge Kessler, you certainly helped us with redistricting here in Las Vegas many times. What about other cities? Have other cities also utilized your services?
In the past, I can tell you this, I've done twice for the city of North Las Vegas, once for Clark County, 3 times for the Milwaukee School Board, a number of times twice for the Nevada legislature, a number of times for the Wisconsin legislature, and I've been an expert witness on court cases for a number of Indian tribes that have challenged municipal or county commission districts. I've probably done 50 occasions where I've either been the consultant or an expert witness on redistricting.
All right, any other questions at this time?
No, I just wanted to ask, we did have trouble here in the past, didn't we? One time where you came with a map that you recommended and that it had to be changed.
Basically what happened is, at that time, I think the council decided not to finish the redistricting. That was the last time.
Well, I was meeting before that.
Before that.
Before that, there was another time also.
But it ended up that at that time, the council ultimately voted and made a decision over 2 different maps, with one councilman feeling strongly and another councilman feeling strongly.
But what I'm trying to say is that you did come with a map that you felt would meet all the rules and meet all the
Right.
legal, and that map was questioned and it was changed because of information which was provided.
Yes, but I think it was ultimately.
I don't mean you didn't reach resolution.
yeah.
I know you reached
Yeah,
resolution.
yeah.
I'm just talking about the
Sure.
place where we are right now.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is it a fair statement, Judge Kessler, that each of the 17 maps that you prepared met the objectives of the 5 categories that you were concerned about that you described?
Yes, they did. I would not have given a map that could have been successfully challenged in court, and that wouldn't have otherwise met all the other criteria that the city has traditionally followed.
All right, and was it your expectation that upon presentation of each of these 17 maps that there would be a discussion between the various members of the council to see whether or not they could work out whatever differences that they had?
I was hoping that would be the case.
And you participated in the process yourself?
I did.
And the fact is that you were unsuccessful, and the council apparently was not able to reach an accord agreeing to each and every aspect of any of the maps.
Every time this always happens. It's a process. I've never been involved in a process where I haven't made multiple maps in order to reach a final map. And usually the final map is reached as a result of a consensus of all or a substantial majority of the members.
And would it be a fair statement that this is part of a political process as much as anything else?
That's correct.
Once you satisfy the legalities, then it becomes a matter of politics where the individual council persons either agree or disagree as to
Right.
what is in their own best interest, hopefully representing what's in the best interest of their constituents.
I think most of the people who, when they vote on this, are attempting to vote in the best interest of the citizens of Las Vegas to make sure that there is adequate representation. And I know sometimes there isn't unanimity on the perception of what happens, but I believe, and I have to say, I continue to be impressed with the devotion and civic concerns of the members of the council, all of them that I've dealt with here in Las Vegas.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions, any further questions of the judge at this time?
One last thing, Mr. Mayor, please. Could I see those 17 maps again, please?
I
Madam
think,
Clerk, could you pass those up? And
Just,
pass them
I
over
just
to
want a
the council?
glance, thank you.
Would you like us to give you the opportunity to look at them before we go forward?
I just wanted to glance at a couple of things,
Okay.
thank
All
you.
right. Any other questions of Judge Kessler at this time? Because I expect you and Mr. Jervis will be remaining here in case we have to answer any of our constituents' questions or issues. At this time, I believe it's appropriate to ask Councilman Ross to place on the record why he was, in effect, a proponent of an effort to redistrict.
Thank you, Your Honor. I feel somewhat responsible for this meeting today and for having Mr. Kessler here in our fine city handling the situation for us because of the great, tremendous growth. And I say only semi-responsible because the other responsibility lies with all of the wonderful people who choose to live in the great Northwest. Ward 6 is huge, and I'm changing the name of it to Big 6 because that's how large it is. I also happen to recognize, though, the need for me as a city councilman to do what is right for the greater part of our city, not just for Ward 6. All of us represent individual wards. The mayor represents the entire city, but we do as well share that responsibility with him. It is important to me to recognize that I need to sacrifice. There are many voters, many constituents in the southern end of Ward 6 who voted for me. And I did not take it into consideration in regards to the fact that they could be having a new council member representing them. And that's a big issue with me, but I think it also has to do with that sacrifice. As our city continues to grow, which we want it to, we need to experience these growing pains. It is part of our responsibility. It is part of our due diligence to do what is right for the betterment of our city. Mr. Kessler, I don't think, I've seen all 16 maps, including this one, and I don't think at one time I've ever been angry with you because I've recognized what I've had to do to sacrifice for this city. I do recognize that other boundaries have changed for other council members, and it will always continue to be a challenge, and I appreciate your presentation because this is not an easy process. This is a challenging process for everybody, not only the council, but for the constituents, the voters who we represent in this great city. And with that, Your Honor, I just want to thank Mr. Kessler for his attempt to get us this far.
All right, thank you very much. All right, folks, I think rather than have the council members express themselves at this time, it's in the best interest of the process during this public hearing to hear from the public. Just by a show of hands, if I may, how many folks plan to address us so I can figure out how much time we have? All right, then I'm going to put we'll put a 3-minute clock on, and if anybody needs more time, we'll adjust it appropriately. But what I would ask, of course, is if you agree strongly with the position that's already been stated by somebody, just get up and say that you agree with so-and-so's position, and then if you want to add a little bit, that's fine, but there's no need to repeat the entire position at this point in time. This is a recommending committee meeting, and if this matter goes forward, it will go forward to the council as a council for consideration and determination. So I'm going to keep into consideration what, if anything, anybody has said here today, as far as the time limitations, if any, that will take place if in fact this goes forward to the council as a whole. So I just want you to keep that into consideration. We'll keep a list of those who are speaking and basically make a judgment at that time. So we want to hear from you, and that's the reason that this has been a public hearing. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Your Honor, and the City Council. My name is Chris Christoph. I still have property in Ward 1.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you said that, Mr. Christoph. I'd like to have the folks, when you come up here, to please tell us where you live, with a specific address if you can, and tell us what ward you're in. I would appreciate that.
I'm going to make it very brief because I spoke to several people on both sides. And I know what the minorities is. I've been here 18 years. I know what the needs are as well for the balance of the whole area, including the outer wards that can expand in all directions. But I cannot see Ward 1 expanding never again to any direction. It is so shrinking because we're losing our tax base. And the tax base was on the west side of Las Vegas Boulevard, all the way down to Fremont Street. Now, I believe when we talk about balancing, as the judge said, minorities and this and that, fine, I'm for that 100%. But there's not even 3%, not even maybe 1% of any voters or any minorities on voters concerned that I know of, because I represent Stupak Center Educational Center, the biggest, the best, and it goes through 6,000 people to learn how to vote, how to be good citizens. You know that, Mayor, as well as other people. It's been like that for 9 years. I think I've covered every square foot of our area. Even though that your area is going to be encompassed with Ward 3, and the different boundary lines out of there. But what really telling people is the west side from Sahara all the way down, and starting from, well, let's put it this way, Charleston is the basic of all the commercial business into the multi-billions, not just multi-millions, they're going to be enhanced in Ward 3. That is not spreading it around equally. Every part, including the Northwest, everybody has to have a balance of a certain amount of money so they can say, we need to put new parks in, we need to do all these things. But saying now, because he doesn't have enough people to vote, is because they fail to educate those people. It is up to the leaders to educate those people, not to me, not to you. You're the mayor. And when we have what I did in Ward 1, I don't wave flags to make it possible for people, kids, grown-ups, so they understand our government, so they obey the laws. Not all of them will, because we have too much traffic. But the important fact that the opportunity in Ward 3 has been overwhelming, and any time that they need anything, but they never educate those people to vote, to live a good life like they live in other areas. The important factor is everybody's knowing this. And everybody's signing petitions. There'll be a multitude of thousands, and it'll affect Ward 3. The new ones, they will make it worse. But I'm just saying, Your Honor, it is not balanced when you take and cherry pick the northwest of Las Vegas Boulevard with a multitude of $1 billion worth of tax revenue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Before we go on to the next gentleman, I'd like to make a matter of record submission that I received.
These are the petitions.
Actually, I received it today. A petition with a cover note from Gene Zorn, president of the Rancho Manor. Letters from Mrs. Patterson, Mary Gorman, Lisa Mayo DeRiso,
Yeah, you'll need this.
Mr.
You
Veto,
live in this area. You support them, yeah?
Bob
I don't know about
Goldstein,
these, but you support
and
them.
then the petition. I'd like to make this all a matter of public record to the clerk at this time. I also would like to make a matter of public record a letter which I received from Daniel J. Deegan with his suggested amendments to the redistricting, and I thank him for what appears to be an awful lot of thought and work and his suggestions. This was made available to all the council members, and this time I would make that part of the record. A letter to myself and the other council members from James and Pauline Kennedy. That should be part of the record. And a letter to the council and myself from Paul Whiting, from Donald Shealy, and from Catherine Martin. That should be made part of the record. And we also have what we call our Citizens Concerns Hot Topics, which are phone calls that are received at the front desk on the 10th floor, where we ask for the caller to give us their name and their phone number, and whether they are for or against a particular item, and include the ward number, and make that part of the record as well. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tom McGowan, Las Vegas resident of Ward 1 for more than 50 years. First, I want to commend Judge Kessler for his excellent work product and the very highly exhausting waivers. Now I have a question in two parts. Which portion, what percentage of these population figures are comprised of illegal aliens, and why isn't that information included in the report anywhere?
That's the first question. Oh, that's a two-part question? All right, let me ask the question my way, okay? Is the issue of quote illegal aliens end quote part of the process as far as the case law on redistricting?
The census makes no effort to determine whether a person is legal or illegal. So we would never be able to know if somebody is legal or illegal. I do know, however, that statistically among Hispanics, that approximately 50% of the Hispanics are citizens at this time. That doesn't mean that the rest are illegal. Many of them are holding green cards and may be included, as people who are potentially citizens. But the Census Bureau basically says, and the courts have basically said, you can't make a determination based on the citizenship status. They said the Census Bureau counts people regardless of whether they're citizens or not. In fact, if Las Vegas were a port and a Polish freighter were docked in the harbor of Las Vegas, the crew on that freighter would be counted if they were there on Census Day.
I see. All right, thank you.
For the benefit of the Polish crew, I'll talk slow.
Well, no. I don't think it's funny. I don't think it's funny. I'm not trying to get this to people, no.
And if the record reflects that the figures are grossly inadequate.
Okay, I don't like those comments about Polish people, okay? Not before my council.
What about stocks? Stories.
You through? Okay, next.
Mr. Mayor, my name is Chuck Thompson. I'm a resident of Ward 1. I have been for in excess of 30 years. Secondly, I'm a resident of Las Vegas. I'm sure much longer than anybody that I'm looking at now, over 62 years. And I cannot be kind in what I'm going to say to these efforts. First of all, I've been around enough, Mr. Goodman knows I've been around, that I can recognize when my colleagues are trying to rehabilitate or to pump up the credentials of the judge in front of everybody. I could see that. I'm familiar with dog and pony shows. Secondly, any system that you try to impose through a series of maps and getting to 17, I've played that game before, we go out of 2, I'll keep going 2 out of 3 till I win, is what it is. That's how you get to 17 maps that apply. Secondly, when you have 6 districts and 5 are expanded or granted something, and the 6th, such as mine, is slammed, shut off, you have to look at the reasons why. That's not accidental, I don't care what the judge says. Next, I want to say that the street talk has been out for a while. I don't mind telling you what it is. I get it from the bowels, I don't mean from a councilwoman or a council person, from the bowels of City Hall. But this is an effort to benefit Congressman Reese. He wants this.
Councilman, you may have demoted him.
Well,
Right.
Councilman Reese, he demands this. He's been there a long time. He feels he's entitled. He has seniority. And it's being done to aggrandize the commission with him. Secondly, I feel almost there's another reason that bothers me even more. Councilman Tarkanian has been known to stand off and has been known to disagree with members of this board on some positions or take majority. I've also heard that this is an effort to, quote, teach her a lesson. All of that is maybe Knox Nicks, but I live there. I live in that district, and I'm not appreciative of having what I call a stunt or a caper pulled. Mickey Spillane was a friend of mine, a client of mine, and he could write a story about this, and it's not even a clever caper as to what's trying to be done toward one. I'm embarrassed for my city that they would try this so overtly. And I want to go a step further and say, you know, I'm embarrassed by my city because I was in Utah over the weekend, and I picked up the Salt Lake Tribune, and there's an article in Las Vegas inside the front page. Let's talk about another incident going on. It's not relative, but the first paragraph said this: Nevada, known for its sin, debauchery, and corruption. And I define this, and that bothered me, that hurt me, because I've lived here a long time. And as I said, when I see something such as this happen, I get a little angry. I've been angry at 2 or 3 things the council has done, but I've kept my mouth shut. I haven't come over and raised hell. I haven't raised hell about the land giveaways. I haven't done anything about that because, you know, I like to move on. But this affects my neighborhood. This affects my residents. This affects my district.
Thank you.
And as I said, and so enough's enough,
Okay.
gentlemen.
Thank you very much. I want the record to reflect that I'm a Ward 1 resident. Yes, next.
Maura Maservi, 2718 Mason Avenue, Las Vegas, Nevada. I've been here at that home, well, most of my life. But,
What ward is that?
Ward 1, excuse me. I'm here to oppose this change. I wish I had known more about it sooner. I highly agree with that gentleman that there's rumbles in our neighborhood. I got a call today from a neighbor asking me to come down and explain the situation. She did a good job of explaining it. I was not aware of it. I am opposed to this map. I did notice that in the current configuration, we have 3 councilmen and women sharing that highly important part of Las Vegas, the Strip and Fremont Street. And that gentleman cut it down to 2. And I think that that's a mistake. I think that 3 of you need to share that kind of power. And I also think it's a mistake to cut my ward into a powerless little thing. He said at the beginning this wasn't about race, and he's right. It's not about race. It's about money and power and growth. And I'm opposed highly to this, and I'll fight this.
Hi. My name is Larry Ansbach, 1509 Golden Oak Drive, and we live in Ward 1. Our neighborhood worked very hard to recall Janet Moncrief, and we worked even harder to elect Lois Tarkanian to represent our interests. And now this council wants to redistrict us, which personally I think is a retaliation for our group suing the city over the Social Security building. The Ward 1 boundaries have changed dramatically from its historical configuration established all the way back in 1975. We virtually have no residential construction tax since there basically is no new development with this new configuration, and the tax revenues that support the parks and other services needed in older urban areas. And more importantly, there's been no neighborhood meetings to talk to the constituents of Mr. Tarkanian's ward, or to hear from the city council person whose ward we would come under after this is passed. I'd like to see this motion tabled so there can be neighborhood meetings to discuss this. This will actually be our 4th representative in 4 years. One question that attached to this bill is business impact statement. And I'm wondering, why is there not a citizen impact statement as well? Is that part of the ordinance, or is it only a business impact statement? Okay, so anyways, I said we would like to have this tabled so we're going to be neighborhood meetings to discuss this. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Mayor Goodman?
Yes.
May I ask Mr. Ansbach a question?
Sir.
Good afternoon, lady. Mr. Ansbach, the last time you came before this council was a very important issue involving the Social Security building, was it not?
Yes, it was.
Do you remember who voted in consistent with your wishes?
Yes.
Who's that?
It was yourself, which is you're saying someone else would be under your direction. So you don't hear me complaining about that. It's more the fact that Lois's ward, we worked very hard, and we've had many meetings with her. She comes all the time to the neighborhood to discuss things with us. And we have this, small notice in the newspaper about this today. That's why there are probably not more people here that know about it. And that's why we think it's important to have neighborhood meetings so you can come to where would be commanding. People can ask you questions, and same thing with Mr. Keenan. We appreciate your vote last time. Thank you.
I'd be glad to do that if it's appropriate, depending on what this council does. But I just find it a little offensive, and I mean that with respect to you, sir, because you're entitled to your opinion. But when you use words like retaliation, I think you have to be careful, because one of the most important votes that occurred as far as your neighborhood, I was in favor of your position. So when you use a word like retaliation, I find it a little offensive. But I thought I was spending.
Mr. Ansbach, after that last vote, did you get an email from me?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Next.
My name is Pauline Kennedy, and I've lived in Ward 1 for more than 3 decades.
You're not old.
30 years. Okay. We have someone that is representing us. We have not been well served for many, many years. The last 3 speakers have pretty well summed up what I wanted to say, but I believe that we do deserve to have had this gentleman in our neighborhood saying why this is happening. Not a little piece in the paper, but we deserve to find out what was going on. I mean, Mr. Arcanian has done this for us. But that isn't how it's supposed to work. We should not have to be here. We should have had town hall meetings or whatever to find out all about this in the 16 or 17 maps. It's not fair that we have to show up today when it sounds to me like a fait accompli. So from now on, we really do need to have some input before it comes to the city council. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, Daniel Deegan, 89 Granite Avenue, a resident of Ward 5. I'm here this afternoon to present you with a substitute redistricting proposal, which I would like you to consider on an equal basis with that of the eminent judge. I cannot claim in any way to match his qualifications or illustrious record. However, I believe that the proposal which I put in front of you is superior in every respect to what he has given you. The variation in population between districts that I propose to you is less than half of the variation in his proposal, and therefore closer to the 1-9-1 vote, Baker versus Carr decision of the Supreme Court. Compactness and contiguity, I think will match if you look at the map. Perhaps superior. The map is also more comprehensible and coherent in the sense that the major natural divisions, such as US 95 Expressway, are followed rather than leaping across occasionally to pick up a few precincts on the opposite side. These orphan precincts appear less in this map. It's better than the previous council map, but they still appear where protrusions of one council ward into another appear. It's quite difficult for neighborhood associations and groups of associations to work with 2 council persons. I think in our case, in wards on the border of Ward 1 and Ward 5, we've done it successfully in the past, with an issue regarding the traffic light on Rancho Drive. However, it takes a lot of effort to do that. Basically, established neighborhoods need to belong together in a compact and contiguous and one ward area. So following those natural boundaries, not having orphan precincts is a major part of my proposal. Another one, which I call neighborhood integrity. Another one was the point that was brought up by Mrs. Mazzovi. Interesting that people, not just one person, but people are thinking this on their own. Downtown deserves to have the attention of all three council persons from the older part of the city. Three people scrutinizing plans are better than one or two. The way it works in the city right now, with a councilman being virtually, ask for an extension for 1 minute.
You certainly have.
Councilmen act virtually as a commissioner for their ward, a semi-executive. If we have a problem in our ward, it gets solved thanks to usually Ricky Barlow. We call Councilman Winkler's office. His liaison is the man who can get things done for us. That kind of sort of semi-feudal ownership of a ward works when you're talking about the ordinary services that would go on. But we have major projects where buildings are cast shadows from one ward to another. We're changing to a different style of Las Vegas with more effects from major projects outside of the immediate ward boundary. Let's have downtown, these major projects, scrutinized and considered by three lines, and the interests of all of the constituents in the older part of the city brought to bear on those problems. Rapid transit lines downtown. Are you going to exclude the Ward 1 council person from those decisions because it doesn't fall within the Ward 1 boundaries? That's what you're asking to do now. The fact is, meeting all legal requirements is not the sole purpose of this map. Its ulterior agenda is obvious to citizens all over the city. And I say this with all due respect for the President Pro Tem of the City Council. We want his input into redevelopment of the city. He has a lot. There are issues where by statute or by informal arrangements, he could look at things like coordination of transport and building projects, of height limitations throughout the city. We have redevelopment areas outside in various wards where there are no neighborhood plans. There are ways to bring his expertise and experience to bear without this kind of word boss. I am the ruler of this project in my ward. I don't think that the people of Las Vegas want that kind of rule. We want his experience, we want his knowledge brought to bear in a more congenial way. And I hope that the council can put aside a lot of personal differences, because the amount of talent here is needed by the city and it needs to work together. Thank you.
Next, please.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Frank Schreck. My office is at 300 South 4th Street, which is in Ward 1, but I'm actually here on behalf of a number of individual developers, property owners, and operators that have properties and businesses within the downtown redevelopment district that's encompassed by Ward 1 at this time. Those individuals have indicated to me that they want me to express the fact that they have had a very good working relationship with Councilwoman Tarkanian throughout the period of time that she's been there. They have enjoyed their relationship with respect to it. They believe that she's been a steward for their issues with the City Council, has been a liaison, and has been someone they could interface with. They want to keep the status quo with respect to that area of Ward 1. And they also want me to make it very clear that this is absolutely not any type of a negative with respect to Councilman Reese. They respect him very much. It's just the fact that it's a very positive support of a person that they've worked very closely with and they admire. Thank you.
Very much.
afternoon, Mayor and council members. My name is Lisa Madruso. I live in Ward 6, but I have lived in Ward 1, and I worked really hard initially when I tried to stop commercial development on Buffalo Crestwood Park, where there is now an LS building. I left the neighborhood and moved, Social Security building. Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm sorry. I'm here today for several reasons. Number one, I've lived in Ward 1, and I believe that there are a lot of issues in Ward 1. I have come to, as maybe I'm a community activist outside of my business role, and tried to help neighborhoods on several issues. And neighbors a lot of times just call me and ask me to help them with petitions or with issues. In Ward 1, there are a lot of issues that have to be dealt with. There are billboards. There are too many, and Charleston needs to be redeveloped. There are older areas of town that need to be paid attention to. And what I see with this redistricting, as I look at it, is the growth area, which in Ward 1 is up through industrial, the arts area and all that, is being taken away from this ward. It becomes very difficult, and when you go to a developer, you go in and try to improve things in your neighborhood. Sometimes you have to have things to trade, and you have to have money to do that. And the way Ward 1 is configured, by throwing that fader up through Rainbow, which is really doctor's offices, the hospital, there's no homes that are going to go up in that area. You're really crippling this ward. And having gone in and tried to work with neighbors and work through the political process, you have to have some strengths in a ward. I believe in the city. I have many clients in downtown that I've brought to downtown. I'm trying to bring more clients to downtown. I believe in the development of downtown. Councilwoman Tarkanian has been very helpful to me, as has Councilman Brown, and of course the mayor, looking at some of these projects. I think the city is a great place to live. I live there. This is like a basketball team. We have 5 players and 1 sub. If we're going to make it to the championship and make it out there, you can't cripple 1 player. You can't have Ward 5 be a player that doesn't have all the assets. Maybe they can't go to the left or whatever they're doing basketball. They can't shoot a 3-pointer. But with this new map, I do believe that we are really taking Ward 5 and really crippling it for growth, new development. This is a wonderful neighborhood. It's an older part of our neighborhood, and I have to believe that it needs to have some strengths. I urge you to go back to the drawing board and really look at how you can keep Ward 5 in much the same configuration as it is. Thank you very much.
And I believe you misspoke yourself. I think you're referring to Ward 1.
I'm sorry, Ward 1. Yes, Ward 1. I'm sorry. But reflect, I was talking about Ward 1. Thank you.
Please. Wait, I think I've seen you.
I know, I was remiss in not identifying individuals I was here representing. I think it would only be appropriate.
I was going to ask you that. I didn't know what they wanted to discuss.
I do. I'm here on behalf of the Stratosphere Hotel and Casino, the Itis family, David Mitchell, Bernard Lieberman, Mark Fine, Michael Trainer, and the Tamaris Properties, among others.
And did they all pay you?
Do they all pay me?
Yes.
Yes, they're most all the clients, yes. Except for Mark, I'm giving Mark a free ride.
You shouldn't. Okay. There's a bump. Yes, sir.
Excuse me, my name is Thomas Prater, and I have a business in Ward 1. And I'd like to take a minute to say happy birthday, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Yes. I'd like to say he's the greatest mayor in the world, and we're lucky in Las Vegas to have him. We really are.
It's a great way to celebrate my birthday.
Yes. But I'd like to say it's been a year ago today that he came down to our store at our business, and we had a grand opening. He spent his birthday there. I thought it was the greatest thing, but he came with Lois Tarkanian, and she came to celebrate it with us 2 years ago. And we have a store that's been remodeled in the Arts District. It's down there on Charleston Boulevard, and that's right there where all the redevelopment's going on. So I'd like to say this, that we have a great mayor, and we have a great city council. All the people standing before me right now, I have to applaud you for everything you've done for downtown redevelopment and your ideas, your dreams, your visions. But I must say that if you look at the redistricting, I think for downtown and all the things going to happen in the next few years, we need to keep it with about 3 people that are able to make decisions down there. And I'd like to say that Lois Tarkanian has been a lot of help to us and a lot of help to other property owners in the area. And we like her. And she's the one that gets our vote. And we want to see her stay on board. And we want to see her take these other dreams and visions that you have and put the vote on it and lead Las Vegas forward in the years to come of Manhattanization of downtown, the great things that could happen that I can see for this city. And I think she's needed on the city council, and we need her in Ward 1, and we need her ideas and her dreams there too, and we'd like to see her stay there with us. In order to do that, we have to make a few changes in the map that you got over here. And I don't want to bore anybody, but take the knife again, look at it again, slice it up a little bit different. And I'd like to thank everybody, and I mean that. You all are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Pamela Stancliffe, 6633 Loudon Lane in Ward 1. I just want to let you know that I'm very concerned about this redistricting. I was one of the people that tried to help last time and got it so that everybody said no. We're concerned about the parks and the services that we have in our older neighborhoods. We have a lot of, we have no place to grow. We are stopped. Even our community college has been stopped now that the psychiatric hospital has taken its place on the land on Oakey. We would really appreciate it if you would either leave us alone and also Ward 5, or make us larger base-wise, because the other areas are going to be growing even faster than, because we can't. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, please.
My name is Robert Rule. I have properties in Ward 1. I guess I need to submit for the record since they didn't get there. I've got over 50 letters by over 100 parcel owners in Ward 1 in support of Lois Tarkanian. If I can just pass that to you, please.
All right, you better pass them up here so we can see them.
Great, great. This basically is our comments that the owners have had for the fact that they voted in Lois Tarkanian. They feel comfortable with Lois Tarkanian. There's quite a few things going on in our downtown area that we feel the support of Lois Tarkanian is needed. None of them want to see her leave. None of them want to see her district be changed, especially if her desires are to stay in our district. If she desires to stay there, we want to support her 110%. The support for the growth of downtown is imperative to us. She's been a strong supporter of that. She's been involved in every project that's been in our ward. She's given good support and strong support for everything that's been in our ward. Again, as long as she wants to stay there, we want to maintain her as our councilwoman for our ward. There is a letter also that, Mayor, when you were making some comments on letters, I don't know if you received one from Kip Cooper from the Board of Realtors?
Yes, I did not, but I saw a copy of it in Councilman Brown's.
It's 2 paragraphs. May I read it?
I read it.
Oh, you did read it?
Yes, I read it in Councilman Brown's office.
Okay, great. That's.
I don't know whether anybody else received a copy of it.
It's 2 paragraphs. May I read it?
No, it's okay. As I said, I've read the letter. It was addressed to Councilman Brown. Has anybody else on the council received this letter? Yes, apparently so. Okay.
Okay. It basically was the 16,000-member Board of Realtors supporting Lois Tarkanian, wanting her to be retained in that district, to summarize it shortly. I only have a couple of comments. One is that I think there does need to be some more discussion on this, that there seems to be a numerous amount of issues that all of us have with the redistricting, in particular with Lois's desire to stay in there and with our desire to retain her. I know the judge has talked about the fact that most major cities, and ours being one of the biggest growth cities, mandates that they do redistricting upon periodic basis. But I think one of the things that we all have to agree on is that Las Vegas is a very dynamic city, and the same things that happen in our city aren't necessarily the things that are catalysts for other cities. We have pockets of growth, like the downtown area, that will probably be the most aggressive growth areas in the next 18 to 36 months coming down the line. And I think it was very adequately put by another person that came up, to have 2 people control that power in that area versus what we have now with 3, I think is short-sighting us. I think that with 3 people, we have a 7-council member with 3 people with hands-on efforts into the downtown redevelopment. I know, Mayor, that you are a strong proponent of downtown redevelopment. I think that those 4 votes out of the 7 is something that we should try to retain. Again, if we can redraw, as Mr. Prado said earlier, if we can redraw that district to make sure that Lois has a good position within her district, it would be mostly appreciated. And if we can just table this to where we can have more discussions, we'd really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Hello, I'm Kathy Best. I live in Ward 4, Councilman Burns. I just, came to come in support of Councilman Tarkanian. One thing is the fact that you're the only woman that sits on this council, and I sure like your perspective. I think it's very important, and that's why I think you should maintain the downtown district. Let alone, I think you deserve more. I think that a lot of these wards have the potential to increase their voters because of some open space. And now the fact that we're starting to build up, so you're going to have high rises with people, but that's not obtainable in our areas because, of course, your areas are developed, and so you're more into the revitalization. So I think it's really important to have your perspective. I think as a woman, you have sage advice. And let's see. I guess that would do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I could just make a comment. Thank you for the comments and the woman's point of view. I'm the 3rd woman in 100 years as a council person. And women can do good things too. Thank you.
Well, I think your vote should count for 2. And if I get a chance, I would love to move back to Illinois. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Yes, Mayor and Council. I'm Juanita Clark, and I have a statement here from Trust and Wood Preservation to read into the record. This is to the City of Las Vegas Councilwoman Tarkanian and all concerned with this bill 2006-38. Respectfully, we request that bill 2006-38 be rejected today. The year of 1996 redistricting boundary changes were for population. In 1999, redistricting / boundary changes were for adding wards. The year of 2002, redistricting boundary changes were rejected by one of the reasons was that voters were unable to vote because as a ward, boundary changes required that precincts are moved. The legal description providing information about which precincts and the number of votes disenfranchised has not been publicized by individual council members to their wards. Obviously, Ward 1 is being more adversely affected than the other 5 from all aspects. We could continue, but request that you reject this bill today, and in the spirit of individual freedoms. Thank you.
Please make that a matter of record. Thank you. All right. Next, please.
Mr. Mayor, councilpersons, I'm in Ward 6.
Can I give us your name and?
Yes, I was going to get to that. I was in Councilman Ross's ward, and I really don't have any dog in this fight. I was.
Oh, we have to have your name.
I'm going to get to it.
Oh,
okay. My name is Richard Victaric. Okay, I'm at 8228 Weeping Springs Avenue. Okay, in the Northwest District. Councilman Ross has done a fine job for us. There's no doubt in my mind, though, and his plate's got to be overloaded. It is a big district, or ward in this case. Came from a different area. But I guess what piqued my interest was, I've certainly not followed this in depth, but what is the rationale for not expanding the number of wards? Because it seems to me that if representation is an issue, then maybe you should have 8 wards, not 6. That's just a question that I posed. I'd like to have some kind of an answer.
Sure, we'd be happy to answer that. However, Mr. Jervik, we discussed this earlier today. We are a charter city, and there's certain questions about us increasing our wards, and I'd like our city attorney to advise you as to the charter provision and
That's correct. Under Nevada law, there are two types of cities. Those that are organized under Chapter 266, those are just statutory cities, and those organized under 268, which are charter cities. We're a 268 city. We have a city charter, and that charter basically says the city can have as many wards as this council decides it should have. 266 cities are not that fortunate. They are mandated to have 8 members on their city council. We are not a 266 city. We're not mandated to have any particular number of members on our city council, and therefore it's up to this council to decide.
Okay. I mean, but what was the rationale for not just saying, let's expand, while we're doing this, expand the wards to 8?
There was no rationale. That wasn't part of our discussion at this point.
Okay, well, then that's the answer. Thank you. And the other is that, I hear a lot of talk about this.
Let me answer this question, though, now that you've raised the issue. Would anything preclude us from, if we as a council felt that it was in the city's best interest and the best interest of all our constituents to expand the council base to 8 wards? Would we be able to do that without going through legislation?
I believe you can if you give me 1 moment, and I have the charter right in front of me. That's correct, Your Honor. Under Section 1.130, which this is the part I eliminated because I didn't think it was relevant for today's discussion, says the city must be divided into 6 wards upon the approval of the voters. Thereafter, the wards will be increased, and one way is by the city council if it determines that an increase is necessary.
As I said, that has not been considered by us.
Sure. Well, thank you.
Apparently, we raised an issue.
There were a number of questions raised about this may impact my ward in one way or another. Was there any analysis done as to whether or not there's some financial ramifications to one ward versus another? I know it's not a Supreme Court issue, obviously.
There were discussions about that. There were some discussions about roof tax, the construction taxes or the new buildings, but basically that's a non-issue as far as I'm concerned as the mayor because, for example, I think that Ward 3, Councilman Reese's ward, over the past several years has received peanuts because there was very little development there, and yet, if I'm not mistaken, we built and improved $50 million worth of parks because I like to think we as a council do what's best for the city as a whole and that each council person not only protects their ward to the best of their ability, but realizes that in order to make it a great city, they have to support one another in the project. So I don't believe, from my perspective, that the economic impact is a relevant consideration. Others may disagree.
Okay, but so there's no mechanical methods applied to what ward gets what money. The city council in general will determine how money flows to one ward versus another. Is that right?
Basically, that's a correct statement. However, under the the construction tax, the rule is that the monies raised from that must remain in that ward for park purposes.
Okay, right. That answers my questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And if I'm wrong, please correct me. All right.
Thank you.
Yes,
I think it's appropriate for us to expand on that discussion briefly. And Dr. Selby, could I ask, with the mayor's permission, for you to chime in here and give us the exact direction as far as roof tax revenue? What does that mean and what happens to it? And if you can add a historical perspective, notwithstanding the fact that Ward A may not have drawn as much revenue from roof taxes, historically, has that type of ward been awarded monies to build parks and recreational facilities?
Councilman, as the discussion evolved, I anticipated this coming up, so I've asked Mark Vincent to be here, and if Mark could come up, he's probably going to be able to give you the best.
All right, Mr. Vincent?
Oh, well, let me let Mr. Vincent have it. To my attention.
Did you hear the question, Mr. Vincent? I know you were engaged in conversation.
Yeah, I didn't hear the question. Go ahead and ask it again.
Councilman Wilson, would you be kind enough to pose your question again? Sure.
Mr. Vincent, there's been some discussion, we've touched on it a little in the last little while, about under the current proposed redistricting map, that if it were to go through, one ward may not have as much rooftop revenue as other wards, and therefore they wouldn't be able to use certain monies to build parks and other facilities. Could you talk about rooftop revenue, what that means, and if you can add a historical perspective, if one ward didn't receive as much revenue from that source, notwithstanding that fact, there were monies from other sources used to build the parks and the other facilities.
Yes, I can answer your question. Excuse me. The rooftop tax is actually called a residential construction tax, and it's a tax that's set by the tax rate is set by statute, but we're, in our ordinance, we can determine what the value, I don't know if the sound system's working, but the value is set in our own code. It has a limit of $1,000 per residential unit. If you do the math based on the current tax rates and values, that tops out about 2,780 square feet. So once you get to a residence that's in excess of 2,780 square feet, the tax is capped at $1,000. Historically, over the years, we've seen an increase in it. This past year, we saw about $3 million in revenue from residential construction tax. For 06, I think about $2 million of that was for Ward 6. There was a significant portion that was for Ward 4, and then there were smaller amounts for the other 4 wards, and that historically has been the trend. Historically, the faster-growing, expanding areas in the Northwest have got the bulk of the residential construction tax. But again, we're only talking about historically anywhere from $2 to $3 million a year in residential construction tax. Now, that tax has to be used for...
Excuse me, Mr. Vincent.
Can I ask you, the money you was talking about, which ward got the least amount of money?
For the last 6 years, I believe Ward 1 has the least amount of revenues.
Which was the next one?
Excuse me, making me do this from memory. It was Ward 3 had the least amount of revenues.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I did hear the last thing you said, the last 2-3 sentences. Could you repeat that?
The councilman asked me which ward over the last 6 years received the least amount of residential construction tax revenues, and it was Ward 3.
These are revenues that are pursued, right, by people who are in the district, councilmen working with businessmen and so forth?
No. Revenues that are pursued?
These.
The residential construction tax is a tax that's placed on the value of residential construction. It caps out at about the limit is $1,000 per residential unit, which translates to about 2,780 square feet of residential living space. Historically, that revenue has been anywhere from about $2.5 million to $3 million the last 6 years. In 2006, I think it was a little over $3 million in revenue. The bulk of that is in wards 4 and 6. Off the top of my head, I'm going to tell you that maybe 15 to 20% of the revenues is then spread amongst the other 4 wards. When we have a capital program, and I was starting to say that that tax has to be used for a neighborhood park of, I think, less than 25 acres. So it has that restriction on it as well. And we have been tracking this since the inception, and the reality is, which is even true for Ward 6 today, the reality is that those revenues are not sufficient to build a park in and of themselves, unless it's a very, very small park. They're sufficient to supplement certain things, but with the exception of Ward 6, $500,000 or a few $100,000 is not going to be sufficient to build a park. So we supplement those revenues from other sources like the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, rebate of room tax with our own general fund contributions, which are significant in the course of the years, as well as bonds. We actually issue bonds as well. So when our capital program for Parks and Recreation might be anywhere from $20 to $40 million a year, depending whether we issue bonds or not that year, residential construction tax is only about $3 million of that. So it has to be supplemented from other sources in order to carry out our program. It's the only tax, by the way, that I know of that is currently ward specific, only because council has defined parks districts as wards as a matter of expediency. All the other revenues that we get are not ward specific. They're not collected in that manner. And you all collectively in our budget process decide where those revenues go. So is that a long answer? Does that get to where you help?
Is that okay? Councilman Ross.
Your Honor, if I may. Thank you, Mr. Vincent. And I've asked you this question 100 times. Can I spend...
And I can't get the answer right?
You didn't put it in writing.
Yeah, I use the Ward 6 residential construction tax for the other wards, and I know what the answer is.
The answer is no, obviously, and the answer is you can't use it for the other wards. It has to be spent in the ward that generated the revenue. However, because we use other sources like general fund revenues to supplement our capital program, you can offset that. I mean, obviously, as a group, you can collectively decide if there was for example, if there was a project in Ward 3 that was a $3 million project, and you all agreed that that was a project you wanted to fund, and it was a project that was eligible for residential construction, it was a neighborhood park. If Councilman Reese only had $100,000 in residential construction tax, you would then have to collectively decide that the other $2.9 million of general fund money could be allocated to that, and that's what you do.
And that was my next question. You answered it before I got to ask it. We can always, in the budget process, in other wards that don't have this residential construction tax, budget for those parks, budget for those improvements in those areas. Am I correct?
Yes, and you do that every year.
Thank you, sir.
Well, the truth of the matter is, I can't remember, as the mayor, where any council member who was trying to improve a park in their particular ward and asked the other council members for support ever being turned down. I can't remember that. I think it's a matter of the way we do business up here. This council thinks of the city as a whole. They take care of their wards. That's what they're supposed to do. They're elected to take care of the wards. But the bottom line is we support each other in taking care of the city as a whole. I'm not asking you to respond, but that's my statement. Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
You talk about that the monies aren't very much monies and you couldn't buy a new park, but isn't it true that the mature wards such as 1, 3, and 5 have very poor parks when you compare them to the newer areas?
Yes.
I've been out to some parks that I sometimes wish I hadn't gone out there, because when I see how beautiful they are and all the amenities they offer, I feel so bad for the people in 1, 3, and 5. But, so 500,000, 40,000, those figures which you gave me, which I have received a copy of, those can be very important. I know in Ward 1, we were begging for light poles. We were going to light poles that were pulled out so that maybe we could use them in some of our parks so that we could make places for soccer, or the Downtown Soccer Association, for example, and things like that. So that amount of money, small as it is, can be very important to a mature neighborhood. And then secondly, and I know what the mayor has said, but when you get down to what you vote for a ward, it does become discretionary, and you do need the majority of the ward to vote for you, and the majority of the council people. And sometimes there might be a concern there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. All right. Ms. Turner?
Beatrice Turner, West Las Vegas. I would like to know, did Mr. Kessler here, did he have a committee that worked with him, that helped him do these maps?
The judge, would you like to respond to that, please?
I talked with all the members of the council, and I've talked with the members of the council's staff, and this time I did not get any independent contacts made to me by anybody who wasn't either a council person or a council staff person. But in the past, I've had citizens contact me by and talk to me about that. It just didn't occur this time.
Well, in all fairness, you're not answering the question.
No, I did not have a committee. I did not have a committee working with me.
I understand that, but Ms. Turner, you weren't here when we started. Basically, there was a presentation, and the judge explained that he was working with Mr. Perigo and his staff. Long hours getting the input from the city staff. So it's not just talking to the council members and their liaisons. It's also working with city staffs as far as the census numbers are concerned.
How many people sit up here? 7?
6 wards and 1 mayor.
Okay. Well, then you don't count, so it's 6. You mean to tell me he couldn't call a meeting with each ward and meet with, send a notice out and meet with each ward and
get the input from the people that live out there that this gonna affect? He got it from city staff, everybody but the people that it affects. He didn't contact nobody from within the other wards. That didn't happen. And, and I stand here today, Mr. Kessler, because you know who I am. Because I'm the same black woman that filed the lawsuit when they first tried to do the redistricting, because the councilman McDonald at that time did not carry the vote on the west side, so he wanted to throw us away and then throw us to Gary Reese, and Gary Reese said, no, because I don't want it. So, I'm the one that went down there in that courtroom and we spent that money and filed that lawsuit until Chester decided to sell us out, and that's why God got him on a bed of affliction now. But I want to say to you, Councilwoman Tarkanian, you hold your head up, baby, because everything going to be all right, because you know what? You the only female sitting here, and you got an older area where you at, and them people been there for 20, 30 years, because I have worked over there. But you hold your head up, because you know what? The Lord will fight your battle through it all. And with these power struggles that they trying to do, and they done hired Mr. Kessler here from Wisconsin, only thing Wisconsin make good is cheese. And you give that to a rat when you put it in a rat trap.
I agree with Beatrice. I don't have to tell. That's
Okay.
it all up.
Councilor Reese.
No, I just, again, yes, Mr. Turner, I don't remember ever saying anytime, anywhere, any place, that I did not want to represent the Historic West Las Vegas.
Don't go there today, because I don't want to hear you.
All right. Have a seat, please. Yes, sir.
Don't you go there.
Hello. My name is Rasan Joshua Collins. I'm not from here, from Washington State. Actually, Spokane, Washington. I'm a street preacher. And I warn people about, heaven and hell, that's the kind of thing I do. And I'm also concerned about what a statement I just said about the poor is my concern right now, because there was a statement made that, these council people care for those in the city. Well, what about the law that was just passed that won't allow you to feed the homeless? That shows me that they don't care about the people in the city, but they don't care about people that are in power and in charge. That's just the truth. It's obvious that you don't care about the people in the city if you can pass a law that you can't feed a homeless person. But I don't have all the clues on this districting and all these issues, but I just ask that you seek God on this, because it's serious. The repercussions if you don't rock with the Lord, like my sister here said, I pray to God that she was here. It's encouraging to hear a voice for the Lord, and that's what we need to follow. God bless.
Thank you.
My name is Justine King, and I live in 2601 Pinto Lane. I'm a Ward 1 resident, and I was asked to read a letter on behalf of a neighbor that is faxed in a letter because they were not able to be here, and it was not made public record, so I'm asked to read it. It states, Dear Mrs. Tarkanian, I just now at 1:00 p.m. was notified by a neighbor about today's city council meeting agenda, including a proposal to redistrict the area where I live. This would remove me and my neighbors from your district, and I feel no less than outraged. I was not notified directly. Instead, I heard the agenda was published in a newspaper. I'm on summer vacation in Reno and Tahoe, and of course wouldn't know about this, as well as other people who are on vacationing out of town. If this redistricting happens, we will have the 4th city council representative in as many years. Does the mayor and the city council truly believe that this is the best action for their constituents? We do not think so. This neighborhood went through a lot to gain Ms. Tarkanian as our councilwoman, and we are very angry. Why is this happening? What happened to the communication with your council and the constituents? There has been no neighborhood informational meeting and no notification. Ms. Tarkanian, we voted you into office to represent our entire neighborhood, not half of it. Please do not allow this to happen.
Signed by whom?
It's anonymous.
Excuse me?
I don't have the name.
Carolyn Stone.
Carolyn Stone.
Carolyn Stone.
Carolyn Stone. All right, would you make that part of the record, please? Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next, please.
Could you hand this one to the mayor? That's the original, and a copy for each one in the court.
birthday, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Mayor. You look a year younger from last year.
Don't tell that, and he'll get you no vote.
Hey, Mayor, I'm in Ward 1. I'm chief scientist with Rockwell Scientific and Rockwell Mining Oil and Gas in South America, and I got a very big concern about this. When a notice comes out, if you read the start of that, I received it 2 days ago, and I'm concerned if you readjust these words, is that going to change for high-rise buildings just to come in and change change everything into a commercial zoning in residential and then move the houses out? Or is there any intentions on that?
That hasn't been part of the discussion.
Because there's a concern right on here, Mayor. The business impact statement is to adjust the ward boundaries of the city. It shows no adverse effects, no beneficial effects, no direct effects, no indirect effects. But if you go to the bill number 2006-38, the ordinance, it states in contradiction to that, right on the heading. The ordinance to adjust ward boundaries of the city and to provide for other related matters. Now, is that going to change or increase the taxes for everybody?
To my knowledge, it has no bearing whatsoever on taxes.
So by not having all these drawings present, is there a reason not to have them here, or is that just an error? Well, he didn't have these other maps here?
No, the testimony has been that 17 maps were prepared and distributed over the course of time, and it's the final map that's before this council for consideration.
Okay, because the reason for that is we're planning on putting a very large facility here in Vegas, and I was kind of concerned about if that was going to be a big tax impact on private industry.
It would not.
All right, thank you very much.
Very good, thank you, and we'll make Mr. Rocco's letter a matter of record. All right, thank you. Would anybody else like to be heard at this time? This is the time to be heard at the recommending committee. All right, don't want anyone to feel that they haven't been given the opportunity to express themselves. That's why we're here today. All right, seeing none, what I would like to do at this time, and I'll use this methodology which I pick out of the thin air, basically, if the council members would like to express their position at this time, they certainly will have the opportunity to do so. We'll do it in order of wards. We'll start with Councilwoman Tarkanian, Ward 1, if you'd like to be heard of this.
I'd like to be heard last, Mr. Mayor, please.
Well, no, I'd like
Why
to be
don't we
heard.
do the alphabet backwards?
As I said, I'd like to hear from you first, please.
Speak up, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to go back to August 31st, 1999, where Judge Kessler came to town and spoke with the people. And he said that when I came here and was hired to assist in the redistricting of the city of Las Vegas, I came here with a strongly held belief that one of the most important things that we want to do when we redistrict is assure that everybody has access to the decision-making table. I think that's what the people here are talking about today. I think that's what a lot of the telephone calls I've had are about. And I think that's one reason why I'm getting more involved in open government and the spreading of information. It's because there's a feeling there is not open access. There is not enough time to get the information out. We tried in our office, as people call, to send out the maps and do whatever we could. In fact, some of the maps we sent out were early on, and then we found out that numbers have been changed and there was some confusion there. But we did as best we could. But that's not enough. Not enough people know. People should be involved in the decision-making process, and if this is political or not political, it still belongs in the hands of the people to a great extent. And I think they should be more involved. And I think, Judge Kessler, you believe that from what you said. And I think from your time in office, other places, that's true. Secondly, I would like to say that on August 31st, 1999, you stated, the downtown is very, very important, and the health of downtown is very, very important to the prosperity of a city as a whole. And therefore, the city as a whole benefits by the downtown having more than one voice on the council. Didn't say 2 voices, 3 voices, 4 voices, 5. It said more than 1 voice. And I feel, when I came on this council, I thought how intelligent these people were. They took the 3 most mature wards, the 3 that need the most help. They took those wards and they shared in that redevelopment area downtown. And what's going to happen with this new map, if it's accepted, is that Ward 1 is going to be knocked out of it, totally. Thirdly, you again stated, the reason, as I stated earlier, was I felt that in a city that is important for downtown, particularly because of its importance and vitality for the whole community, to have the opportunity to have more than 1 council person. And that's a persuasive reason to go in that direction. Those were quotes from August 31st, 1999. You know, I listened today to some of my fellow councilmen speak, and they talked about what's best for the city as a whole. To me, what's best for the city as a whole is for the entire city to be vibrant, the entire city to be able to achieve, and to look at what's needed. I understand Councilman Ross's need in the area that he represents and how crowded it is. I have no objection to that type of balance. But for the problems he has, they're very, very different than the problems in Ward 1, as 1 or 2 of the speakers mentioned. And those problems need to be addressed too. And we are not going to be able to address them if all redevelopment and development is almost totally taken away from Ward 1. When we began this process, I told the judge that I wanted to keep the ward that I had now, and I'd take whatever else they wanted to give me. It was the smallest ward, and so whatever else they wanted to give me, I'd be glad to take, but I wanted to keep the ward I had now. I think that from some of his naps, he made an attempt to try and make changes in before we came to this final map. But on the other hand, he also told me some things that concerned me, and I don't know, Judge, if I can ask you this now, or if you can say this, but could you tell me why you told me it would be a 6-1 or a 5-2 vote at most? Could you tell this council why I would be concerned? Because of that statement you made to me and my staff. I believe Mr. Jervik was there also. Do you remember?
Unfortunately, I don't remember.
Okay, then I'll say what I remember and what the other people who were there remember. That the reason why I could not get votes to change, or when you talked with him and you were working diligently to talk with him, the reason why was because friends, that council members had stated they were friends with Councilman Reese. He had done things, that had helped out in their situations. That's all right. But also because perhaps there was retaliation for votes I had made. You had said that to me. Now, I want you to know that I have tried very hard while I've been on this council never to think there was any reason why of retaliation. And yet you stated it that day, and it just like put a quiver in my heart. Because then it began to make me feel, yes, there are these things happening. And to me, I can't count on being able to vote my conscience and do what I think is right. If it's a 6-1 vote or whatever vote it is, if I have and then I'm going to get a fair shake. Because right now, I don't feel, from what you said to me and from what others have said to me, that that's happening. I truly feel that in my heart. Now, I want you to know that there were other people that were there that heard this, because I was very surprised and very concerned, and we discussed it after you left.
Judge Kessler? Judge Kessler?
Yeah, I wouldn't know if...
Speak up here.
Wait, that's not the way we do business.
Want to hear this?
Wait, as I said, Judge Kessler?
Okay, I would not know if anybody was engaged in any retaliation action. I'm not involved. I've never sat in any other council subject matter other than this. I don't recollect any such statement that I ever made, because it's certainly something that I would be totally unaware of.
And Judge, you did not tell us that you had been told this you did not tell me and my staff that you had been told this by people who were involved in any type of retaliation. You told me that you had been told that this was one of the reasons why there was not a movement on the 5-2 or the 6-1. That's what you told me. But I'll move off of that. But I want you to know that this has come to a point where I feel very strongly that if you get elected and you represent the people, you should be allowed to represent the people. There were two other concerns I wanted to mention. One of them is that, could someone just put this under the map for me, under the light or the machine, the technological aspect of it?
Overhead, please. Thank you.
I would like to have you look at this map. I'm talking about development and redevelopment and how this realignment of wards will affect Ward 1. You see that little glove down there on the left-hand side? Mm-hmm. That's all that's left for any development or redevelopment in Ward 1. And that little glove contains our Gurley Industries. What's the official name?
Adult
education clubs. I think they're probably no, not that. Okay.
No, it's not adult education. It's just
okay. That's what I meant. There you go. Okay.
Well, I'm an expert in that.
That little glove contains the sexually oriented businesses, which I don't know if they'd want to sell no matter what they get for a high raise from the money I've been told they earn off of their businesses. But that's all that's left. Now, if you look at the other, if you look at all the way through there, those are the other two mature wards. Those are wards 3 and 5. All of that goes to them, and that little thing at the bottom, which probably will never ever develop past the sexually orientated businesses, that's what's left. That's what I'm talking about when I'm saying you're taking all opportunity for redevelopment and development out of Ward 1. And we can talk about financial figures, we can talk, and one thing I've learned is there's a lot of different ways to say things. Nonetheless, I think that map shows that. Lastly, I'd like to say the people elected me to represent them. And I think these people here, and I think others have indicated they want to retain me. I think we're talking about developers. I think we're talking about realtors. I think we're talking about residents. I think we're talking about a lot of people. We've worked very hard in this ward, and we have started an impetus of progress that I think is very, very important. And that impetus can be utilized by anybody who has that type of development, even on the other side of Las Vegas Boulevard. But you have to work with the people, and you have to try and do the best you can there. The key factor here, I think, is representative government. How do you elect somebody and then have them move? It's not on. Thank you very much. My paper knocked it over. How can you elect somebody to represent you and feel that that's your right in an American democracy, when in fact it can be changed like that without really much due notice, without much input? I mean, we're talking about a fundamental right of representation. And we're saying, okay, you know, our charter says that if you have a discretion, you don't have to, but you have a discretion in between census years that if you feel you should, you can make these changes, but you make them based upon what is found to be permissible by the city council. You listen to those words. You have to change them on what is found to be permissible by the city council. When I talked to a group of individuals over the weekend about that, they were aghast at the wording, even in that. I mean, what can the city council do? It doesn't have to be just. It doesn't have to be fair, but it should be, because we're talking about the fundamental rights that individuals have in our country. And it probably is the most precious right, the right to vote, the right to have your representative there, and to have them represent you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Wilson, please.
Thank you, Mayor Goodman, and thank you, Mayor Goodman, and thank you, Councilwoman Tarkanian, for your comments. I'd like to talk about the subject of notice. This process started about 6 months ago. Would that be a fair statement? And it's actually an extension of what we almost did 2 years ago. I was elected to this council about 24 months ago, and soon after I was elected in 2004, the subject matter of redistricting came up because there was a recognition that one ward had so many more people than another ward. And the process started, but it was ended. I'm not sure why, but I think there was a consensus that, well, we're not going to do it this year, we're going to do it next time. And I was new on the council. Like I said, this is about 2 years ago, and I said, okay. So we started the process again about 6 months ago. And this wasn't a secret process by any means. Councilwoman Tarkanian, I think you and I together have had perhaps 3 meetings face to face. I had a number of meetings with Judge Kessler. There were discussions amongst my colleagues. But it certainly wasn't a secretive process. I appeared on the Access City Las Vegas television show, as I do, and as we all do every 6 weeks. And I spoke about this subject matter, I believe, on 2 separate occasions on television about redistricting and that it was going to occur. So I don't think it was a secretive process by any means. In fact, it was talked openly by a number of us. It was published in the newspapers, and it was discussed just in general. I believe in the open government and the flow of information, and Councilwoman, you and I have talked together about that. And we have agreed about the problems that we've seen in the city of Las Vegas on the issue of flow of information, and we've advocated together on that. So when we talk about, and I respect what you folks are saying about not getting enough notice, but I don't understand that because it's been talked about, it's been published in the newspaper. I trust Councilwoman Tarkanian and her staff has talked to a number of people, and you're here. And I'm not sure what better notice there could be. And then the subject of retaliation, and I must address that again. Before I became a council person, I knew Mayor Goodman professionally in our other lives. We weren't good friends by any means, but we knew each other. But until I got on the council, I'd never met Councilman Weekly, I'd never met Councilman Brown, Councilwoman Tarkanian, perhaps we met, but we didn't know each other. Councilman Reese, we'd never met, or we'd met once. I mean, hardly knew each other, and I never met Councilman Ross till a year ago. So when we talk about retaliation, I don't even understand that. You and I have voted together on a couple of issues. When you stood by yourself, I've been there with you a couple of times, and I just don't understand what this retaliation is. I really don't.
Mr. Wilson, if I could address that.
It's up to you, Steve.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to tell you that I did not begin thinking there was retaliation. I was repeating to you what was told to me in a very, very important situation for my ward. And that's what I'm telling you. Did I think there was retaliation at the beginning? No. I feel the data supports, I think the history supports that we shouldn't be doing this map. But on the other hand, I think I even told the newspapers that I was hoping when the data came out that that would be. So when they tried to ask me if there was retaliation and get me in a position to say it. But you know, when I am told in a meeting, such as I was told from somebody from out of state that has heard it from people in this area, in the city, then I'm concerned, yes. And secondly, let me tell you, there's a difference, I would, if you don't mind my adding, there's a difference between knowing that you're discussing redistricting and then knowing, okay, this is the map and this is what we're going to go on it. And the calls I had were people who saw the notice in the mail on Sunday, in the RJ on Sunday. And they were saying, what, this is done, we haven't had time to talk about it, because in the past, when Judge Kessler was here, you didn't just have one recommending committee, you had other open meetings, you didn't just have it at 4 o'clock. I had someone coming up here that works here in the City Hall and said, will it last past 5? I work till 5 and I'm going to try and get up there. It's hard for people who work to get here at 4 o'clock. And that's what I think these people are saying.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, but back to the retaliation, respectfully, I just don't see it and I don't understand it, and I certainly haven't participated in that process. My final comments are that this is a difficult process because we have such a large city and such an imbalance between the wards. We have to restructure precincts to take from Councilman Ross and give to Councilman Reese, and then Councilman Brown and I are kind of in the middle. It's a process that's required to best represent our constituents, and this process requires the reassignment of ward boundaries and the reassignment of precincts. And this is the first time I've been through this process, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty. It's got its ugly side. It certainly does. I don't know that this process can be 100% foolproof where everybody's happy. Because if you take Precinct A from Council Ward A and put it in another ward, somebody's going to be unhappy. Because this gentleman might like their councilman, but this person who's in the same ward may not like their councilperson, and they may want the new one, but they don't want to give up the old one. So I just think that this process is democratic, it's open, but by its nature, it's going to never please everyone. And I just know that on my behalf, and I really believe on my colleagues' behalf, we're just trying our best to accomplish what we think is fair. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'm going to have a 3-minute recess so the staff could rest up a little bit. 3 minutes of recess.
And all of the fans is real shitty about now.
I'll stay.
But he didn't, yeah. Stayed in the back room the whole time.
Hey, how are you? Listen, I'm going to give you a lot of homework next week.
Yeah. You know, I got a feeling it's not gonna end today. It's not gonna die. If they push it through, there's gonna be repercussions. I'd say huh? What's that? It's a marketing.
Could I look at the 17 maps again, or somebody?
As far as I know. Can we? Shut off mics for right now. Okay. No, I know.
Yes, mind if I talk?
All right, folks. Thank you very much. Would everyone have their seat, please? Call the meeting back to order. I'd like to hear from Ward 3, Councilman Reed. Please, folks. Please, have a seat.
Thank you, Your Honor. I too want to thank those that participated today.
We can't hear.
I too want to
Can't hear.
I want to thank those that participated today, the information that was passed along. My ward, Ward 3, is probably the hardest when it comes to redistricting. On the north, I'm bounded by...
Excuse me, Councilman. People are indicating they can't hear. Is there any way to turn it?
We can't hear you.
That's what I'm talking about. So, is there any way to turn up the mics? All right. Councilman, if you don't mind. Good. Now everyone will be able to hear.
Can you hear me? Thank you. One more time. I too want to show my appreciation for those that come out here today and participated in this process. I feel like that my ward is probably the hardest ward to redistrict. I think that on the north side I'm bounded by North Las Vegas, and on the east side I'm bounded by the county, and on the south side I'm bounded by the county. If Ward 3 were to go, if Ward 3 were to go in the northwesterly direction, the effect would be to cut African Americans out of our current district and dilute the racial makeup of that district. To me, that isn't acceptable. If Ward 3 were to go in the southwesterly direction, there would be no disruption in minority representation, and I could represent again in the way I previously represented, and I know pretty well. I think fairness and common sense, to me, make the second choice the best. Thank you, Madam.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. This will be Councilman Brown, please.
Let's see if my mic works.
No, it ain't working.
Say woo, and see if it works.
Beatrice, can you hear me?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple comments I would like to make prior to any kind of motion being made is this would be my third redistricting effort. And as has been indicated by a couple of speakers and council members, sometimes it's not always pretty and sometimes it's not always easy. But one of the points that needs to be emphasized here is we've gone through 16, 17 maps. I would offer that Mr. Deegan's map likewise would meet all the criteria. And in all of those maps, all of the wards are affected. One of the things that I agree with Councilwoman is that we are elected to represent our areas. And we do, especially with those areas that we've worked hard in and projects that we're passionate about. At times it's difficult to lose some of those areas or projects, but that's inevitable because as was stated to start the presentation, we are growing so quickly that to try to maintain what we have even for 2 years or 4 years or 6 years is difficult. And no one ward can stay the same at the cost of all 5 other wards. It's just impossible. And for one of us to say that we want to remain intact is impossible because it's a domino effect, as we've seen with the 16 or 17 versions. So what I've seen the past few times, and certainly with this, what we hope to get to is a point where there's compromise that we all don't lose the areas that we want to keep and gain the areas we don't want to gain. And that comes down basically to compromise and communication. And perhaps one of the messages obvious that's come out today is that communication hasn't been there, where miscommunication has been there. I know that some of the speakers spoke on issues today that they've received bad information. Some of the petitions and such that we received are from residents that are protesting the redistricting effort, but are not impacted by any of the redistricting areas. I think we've put to bed the issue that was profiled the last week or so as far as the losing of taxes or redevelopment or RCT. That is the furthest thing from the truth. I will comment, because it came up again today, some of the perception that wards 2, 4, and 6 get the newest and nicest and biggest parks. Well, it's probably true, because it started with the fact that wards 4 and 6 had no parks. And we were able, with the growth of Las Vegas, to go onto BLM land, and we still are, to get large tracts, 40, 80, 120 acres or greater, for $100 and build the newest city facilities. That gets so turned around sometimes. The toughest challenge we've had is to go back into the more mature areas, 1, 3, and 5, that do not have 200 acres of BLM land that we can go on, and don't have the large open spaces that we can get in there and build some brand new facilities. But despite that reality about the 2, 4, 6 versus 1, 3, 5, all you have to do is look at what has been accomplished over the last 5 years or 6 years in wards 1, 3, and 5, acknowledging that we still want to continue, but we've had some tremendous redevelopment in the open space areas. We had the All-American Park, which is part of Ward 1. We have the Laura Bowie Community Center, long overdue, but now one of the nicest facilities and the newest facilities in the city. Councilman Reese's area have the East Las Vegas Community Center, the plans for Freedom Park, Mike Morgan Park. So that whole issue of RCT and inequality and losing the opportunity, that is a red herring. This council has demonstrated, not talked about, has demonstrated its ability to deal with city parks and open space as one city. And if there are issues when it comes down even to neighborhood lights or covering playgrounds or things like that, we have a process that I'll agree with the mayor. We've never said no to requests that came into the process. Sometimes it's a competitive process. Sometimes a project gets put on hold a few years. But overall, it's been tremendous as far as what's been accomplished throughout the city. The one area that may be the toughest is this whole compromise. And certainly, I think that the positions of a couple of the members here have become entrenched because they're both passionate, or three are passionate about certain areas. But it reaches a point where if there's not going to be continued dialogue, if there's not going to be, well, maybe we'll consider this or consider that, if the attitude comes to the point where I want it this way or I'm not agreeing to anything, then we run into the problems, because that's never going to happen. It's impossible for someone to want only what their ward boundaries are today. It just can't happen. And that miscommunication, lack of communication, and entrenched positions are worse this go around than what I've experienced the last few times. And we also hear that I'm losing good areas and gaining bad areas. Well, take a look at the entire map. And I can speak only for Ward 4, but I'm losing 3 of the finest precincts I have in the Summerlin area out of necessity, because there's no other movement I can make other than northerly. I'm picking up along the Rainbow Corridor 3 precincts that are some of the most challenging when it comes to crime and densities and lack of development opportunities. It's not that I wanted to jump across the highway and take them, but from the overall domino effect, it certainly made sense. It's not going to hurt my ward, it's just going to be part of the new divisions. So, you know, the point I'll leave with is that we went through so many iterations that there were opportunities for compromise and give and take. This map represents either the lack of consensus or the entrenchment that's been involved, but I feel very comfortable that we have tried to do the things that Judge Kessler says we have to do to meet all the criteria. And you know, unless someone's willing to be very specific what they want as far as a compromise or what's on the table to make it more equitable, both real and perceived, then I'm willing to move forward with what's before us today.
Thank you.
All right, Councilor Weekly. Thank you very much, Your Honor, and thank you to everyone who came and showed participation today. You know, I'm reminded of a poet, Nicky Giovanni, who said, life for us ain't been no crystal stairs in Ward 5. And I know that everything that we have had to endure in this ward has not always been easy. And since I've been on this council, I know that I've had to struggle and scrape and fight and beg and lobby and do everything that I possibly can to get the kind of support that we've been getting. You know, redistricting is not a very pretty process. It's difficult and it's extremely stressful, and I'll go on the record and say, and I'm sure Mr. Kessler can vouch for this, that I didn't act very nice during this process. I wasn't very nice at all. I wasn't disrespectful, but I was one of the ones that was not very nice because I was not happy with the maps. I was not happy with some of the things that I saw that was presented to me. You look at Ward 5. Ward 5 is a ward that is one of those wards that actually we are the only ward that touches everybody. We're kind of centrally located. And so we were kind of this ward in the initial beginning. We received everything no one wanted. And that's the kind of ward that I represented. The ward where I got precincts that people dumped off on because either they didn't want them or, that's just the attitude that I had a long time ago. And so, when I looked at some of these maps that were presented to me, I too said that, I could really have a hard time with all of this, but I've been doing it over 6 years, and I've dealt with what I've had to deal with. And, you go through Ward 5, and, it's no secret we are the most diverse ward. We are the ward that deals with the most social issues. People were knocking on my door asking for some of those precincts. We're the ward with, in my opinion, we have a lack of development, and things are getting better, but for a long time we hadn't had any. We're a ward that has had to deal with a lot of outdated parks. And so, we've dealt with our issues, but we've kept pressing on. And, one of the things that I've learned through this redistricting process, this will be my third term. I've only been on the council now 6 years. I've had to go through it on several occasions, and I have not liked it any time it's been presented to me. But Kessler will tell you, and everybody else on this dais, there was an issue that, Ward 6 and I had as I bordered his ward. And I went to the council, and I appreciate that. We didn't agree on some of the precincts that, they were recommending to me, but, you have to stand firm, and you have to say just what's on your mind and what you can handle. And, they say, Lord, don't put no more on you than you can bear. And I was refusing to take anymore because I know what I can deal with at this time. And, again, my word is, and I'm not making any excuses for it because I'm very grateful, Las Vegas, to have an opportunity to serve. I really am. It's not easy, but I'm very grateful to have an opportunity to serve. And Councilwoman, I understand your frustration, because I was very frustrated with this process, but it's about, the same thing like Councilman Ross, when you came in to speak with me about it. And again, I'm the ward that I almost have to talk to everybody about it. If you look at the ward map now, you can see I'm one of those ones that have had to have a conversation with everyone because I had to do some bargaining. But I'm here to say I want my constituents of Ward 5 to know. Behind the scenes, I'm cool out here on the dais. I rose some saying up on the 10th floor because I wasn't having it. I have to represent my ward, and I have to keep what I can do. And that's just it in a nutshell. Thank you.
All right.
Can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear me now?
Councilman, thank you very much for those comments. I do want to publicly admit that you're one tough guy, because you are, and you fight hard for your ward. Councilwoman, I have the utmost respect and admiration for you. I expected in this audience tonight that we would see folks from every ward, because every ward is affected by this redistricting. I am losing 16 precincts, if I counted correctly. I may be wrong. But that's a whole heck of a lot of people, and I don't see any of them down here, so I'm kind of bummed out that they're not down here protesting the fact that I may lose them as a constituency. What does that tell you? Those 16 precincts are going to Councilman Brown and Councilman Weekly, and I just would imagine that my constituents happen to like their kind of representation, and that's why they're not down here. I'm a little offended in regards to an allegation or a thought or a comment that someone made about retaliation. And Councilwoman, I need you to know that, because that's not where I sit here at this dais. I will stand up and do what is right for the right reasons for this city. That's why I was elected by the constituency to do so. And I think that's correct for all of us on this council and the mayor. This is definitely a challenge, and Councilman Weekly says he's gone through this 3 times. My goodness, this is my first time, and I'm getting hit the hardest here, and it's not in a bad way. It's because it has to be this way. If you look at those maps, you see that great big brown empty space out there towards the northwest. All of that's going to be filled in the upcoming years, the upcoming months, actually. And it's happening today. I'm not opposed to even filling in the white spots that represent the county islands. It's challenging for me, as it is, to represent the city folks, but I also have to stand up and fight for those folks as well. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Can you folks hear me? All right, good. All right, you can hear me louder now. As the mayor of the city of Las Vegas, I have no horse in the race. What I want is what's best for my constituents. I prided myself for the past 7+ years in being the mayor of a council, albeit with changing members, that was collegial, that was able to work together, and was able to do what was best for the city as a whole. This process has been a divisive process by its very nature, because it's a political process unlike any other. Our representatives are trying to fight for a particular area of the city, which has to be devised in accordance with the Voting Rights Act and the other areas that Judge Kessler discussed. During the course of the process, we've attempted to arrive at some consensus. Unfortunately, that consensus was not achieved. But that's the nature of the beast of redistricting, because unless the council people can work out their differences, it has to go forward, and the council as a whole has to vote as to whether or not we meet the criteria of the Voting Rights Act and the other aspects as far as redistricting. We knew from the get-go that Councilman Ross's ward was too big, and there had to be adjustments, and that's the reason that we went forward. We had 17 different maps to study. I know that there were discussions between all of the council members and myself as far as their wishes, their desires, and the like, and it was obvious at the end of the day that they weren't able to reach an agreement, and therefore it comes before us with certain feelings that have been expressed today, not only by the council members themselves, but also the constituents who came down here to be heard, and I thank you for that.
Unfortunately, during the course of the process, certain allegations and accusations have been made. And as the mayor of the city of Las Vegas, I must take issue with them. I don't believe them to be true. I believe that they are offensive and are inconsistent with what I know of my council members. There has been an allegation of retaliation. I specifically deny that. It has never been discussed with me, and I'm the fulcrum. I'm the center guy, the point man that people come to discuss what's happening during the process. I have never heard one word about retaliation until today. 2, to teach a lesson. I don't know what lesson is to be taught by this, other than the lesson that in order to get what you want, you have to be able to speak to your colleagues and you have to be able to reach a consensus. That's the only lesson. 3, I live in Ward 1, so I'm not going to allow anything to happen which is adverse to the interests of people who live in Ward 1 because it would be committing suicide, and that's not my nature. I don't believe that anybody on this council had the auto dialer script prepared, which went out last night or the night before. There was an auto dialer that went to many people throughout the city. And as I say, I don't believe that anybody sitting up here in the dais composed this script, but I find it to be offensive. I take issue with it, and I'll act in accordance. Quote, the good old boys are at it again. Now that's a good one so that some of the people who think that they shape public opinion can start off an article with. The Las Vegas City Council is considering redistricting the wards in Las Vegas, and all they think about is their own re-election and the special interests they represent. I haven't heard any of that today. I haven't heard one comment about re-election, that there was a gerrymandering in order to get voters that were favorable to one council person or another in order to get votes. And the special interests they represent, I don't know what that means. What special interests other than the city of Las Vegas do any of us represent? I don't care what the voters in Las Vegas think. Well, that's the reason that we listen to you and we hear what you have to say. That's the reason Mr. Deegan provided me with his work product, and I thanked him for it. Because whether it's followed or not, that's not the relevant issue. The relevant issue is that we appreciate what our constituents have to say, and that's the reason that we listen. All they think about is their re-election and their war chest. Well, I'm not sure who's up for re-election. I am. I'm not worried about my war chest. I'll raise more money than anybody in this community in one day with my eyes with a blindfold on. And, excuse me? And Councilman Brown can't run again. He's term limited. Councilman Ross, he's not up for re-election. Councilman Wilson's not up for re-election. So I don't know what that means. All we think about is our re-election and our war chest. Call 229-6405 and tell the good old boys that they need to represent the citizens of Las Vegas, not special interests. I'm not sure what that means, but I find it offensive. That number is 229-6405, or show up at the city council chambers tomorrow at 4 p.m. to voice your opinion, which is good. I want to hear from you. I wish we had 10 times as many people here today to tell us what they think. Stop them. I guess it's the good old boys. Don't let them do this to you anymore. The good old boys with their special interests. That's bull. That's bull. I know how seriously all the folks up here, every council person, has taken this and has worked with one another to try to get the right thing done for the people of Las Vegas, and not to feather their own nest. And I find that very, very offensive. But this has been a wound that has been inflicted on the council, this process, more so than any other that I've been through since I've been the mayor. And a wound festers unless you do something about it. And that's the reason that I want to go forward. And I'm going to move that this bill number 2006-38 goes to the council for consideration on August the 2nd, so that the wound will start its healing process. And in the meantime, I'm going to advise my council and the city staff that I will work with anybody between now and August the 2nd. I'll meet with them on weekends or nights or whatever, if they want to sit down and use me as a mediator in order to get something agreed upon and to have the comments of our constituents taken into consideration. If you want to change it, we can always amend this bill when it comes to our consideration. But my motion is to move forward as a recommending committee and forward this to the City Council for consideration on August the 2nd.
Mayor,
yes.
I just want to say one thing, and that is I want to thank everybody here and for all the nice things you said. There are many people in this audience I don't think I've ever met, and I think it would make any council person here feel very pleased that you said such nice things. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman. Let's vote, please.
Before we vote,
yes.
just a question of procedure, perhaps. If this motion were to carry and it were to come before us on August 2nd for consideration, should the council pass the ordinance on August 2nd, what kind of effective date would it carry, Mr. Chairman?
Normally, it would go into effect upon signature and publication, assuming the mayor signed it right after the meeting. That would normally be Sunday at midnight, Saturday night, Sunday midnight, the following weekend. The council can always amend it to make an effective date different than that if you want to. But keep in mind that we do have primaries coming up next year and things like that, and people need notice as to who's going to file and who's going to vote.
As I said, if anybody wants to use my services as a mediator, I'm there. Let's vote. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, at this time, folks, it's citizens' participation. Public comment during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters within the jurisdiction of the committee. No subject may be acted upon by the committee unless that subject is on the agenda and is scheduled for action. If you wish to be heard, please step up, give us your name. Let's put a 3-minute time limit. It's been a long afternoon. In the middle.
Have that microphone?
Yeah, sure. You're good.
My name is Chris Christoph. I live at property at Ward 1, and we have other properties in other areas. But
please, folks, let's be courteous. There's a speaker.
Your Honor, the person or the couple that you think that may be here is not here. The important factor of telephone calls or telling people that's another instrument that anybody can spade or do. The groups that are interested with Ward 1, many in the hundreds, would like, and I think right now, to meet with you as an audience to the mayor, because you live in Ward 1, you represent Ward 1. It is not because we don't want 13 mayor or anybody else, but you said to go to here just now, I want to meet with my people in Ward 1. So I will make arrangements with the multitude that will use this place as not as argumentary, but a concerned support, because everybody's going to say the one word. And I have nothing against anybody on this subject. We can go from one boundary to another and expand and subtract. You cannot take the commercial area and say it's residential as what we call balance off, like it was said in this, and I just say it. Taking northwest from Oakey all the way down to Fremont and giving it to Ward 3, this is the biggest argument going all the way around, and it's upset every merchant on Las Vegas Boulevard and around. Not because of him, it's off balance. I believe that the judge was trying to balance it, but you're taking multi-million dollars and billions away and giving it to a person who wants to rezone or go into another part of the area to expand. And to me, that's what Ward 1's going to say, and that's what every business merchant that's going to come here too and be invited saying, we don't mind you taking Meadow Village, we don't mind you taking this. Why are you just the person, Ward 1, saying, we want all this business area here? Has no residents there. There's nothing voting in those areas. So I believe, as a judge, supposed to understand, and other people, we're talking about balance of minorities and things like that. Not business, not to take a cherry pick. And that's a word that's going around this whole area. And it's not to embarrass you or the pro tem mayor, but it's going to backfire. It's going to backfire, like you said and I said, that how many precincts that's in Ward 1 that they're going to take to be in Ward 3, that 10 or 15% on the precinct, 15% of that or more, and that whole area is going to be in Ward 3. And when he runs for Ward 3 next year, and plus other aspects of his ward that he's in now, he's going to have a leg to stand on. I don't give a damn if he's got $3 million. Those people want to have representation, not to touch that area downstairs of the business. That's all I have to say. And this is going to be, I will make it very clear, at a reasonable time, we set it up, get some leaders, and have a meeting with the people. You're Ward 1, and Lower Star Canyon is one.
Always happy to meet with the constituents, they know that, and, but what I was saying, Mr. Christoph, I'm happy to meet with my council members. If they want me to act as a mediator, I'm happy to do that. I'll make myself available day or night.
But you do live in Ward 1, and you said, I want to meet with my people in Ward 1.
Anybody, but I'm just saying, as far as the council members...
Do they have to be here at this meeting with the people that represent Ward 1?
No.
Right, okay, that's all. Thank you.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Sorry, Kathy Best again. Previously, I forgot to show you what I feel like my ideas of the way it should be redistricted for one. Of course, given we're back to downtown, I'd just like to say I would certainly like to meet with you, Mayor Goodman, only because, my councilman knows that he can call me anytime, and not once did he even ask me, and I've seen him, as a matter of fact, what I even thought about the map, and the redistricting or anything like that. Now, I've come into the building and I've seen the map sitting there, and I think for a majority of people, they didn't even really had the idea they could respond. The only first time I had the idea was in this morning's paper that I could even come up here and respond.
You're always welcome to come.
So, yeah, I'll definitely be meeting with you. I'll probably call everybody because I think we deserve a chance to be heard in our opinions and that we should make it easy to be in touch with you guys. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next, please.
Beatrice Turner, West Las Vegas. And I want to say to you, Councilwoman Tarkanian, I know how you feel. I've been there. When I've had everybody that I board that I sit on, and everybody turned their back on me and say I was a troublemaker and I was this and I was that. But see, you know what an old lady told me? She said, you keep the faith, baby, and you keep doing what you're doing because the Lord going to make a way for you. And yesterday, he did make a way for me when that audit report came out. But you know what? Through it all, and I done been through it all, and my good friend sitting here, the good man, who came and grandstanded at the Housing Authority and told all us he wanted us to resign from the board. Well, I'm the only one that wouldn't resign. And if he had to let us do our job then, the taxpayers wouldn't have been caused all this money that have been wasted at that Housing Authority. Because, and then he brought the almighty Bobby Groenauer to the board, because, Massa was supposed to control this color good, but that didn't work, and that ain't gonna work. And I want you to know, brother, I ain't put all my eggs in one basket. Because, see, it takes her, you got to throw them a little and let them do what they supposed to do. So, now that I got this one yesterday, on Friday, I got some more eggs to throw out there to them. And after that, I got some more eggs, and then I'm done. Because I can say I have fought a hard battle when it comes to the Housing Authority. I've been in this battle 25 years, and it's time now that Beatrice throw her hands up and walk on. And the lady from D.C. told me, she said, Ms. Turner, we're really scared to issue this report because you have been so vocal. Because we don't want nothing to happen to you. You know what? And like I said, let the chips fall where they may. And I wasn't born to live forever. And I say to you, Councilman Wiggly, if something happened to Beatrice, all I want you to make sure you do, you make sure Lynette Bowles McDonald, you make sure the good Judge Billy is singing at Beatrice Memorial Service here. Because, see, I tell you, whatever happened to me, y'all going to see me again because my ashes going to be spread right here.
Thank you.
Amen.
My name is Deborah Jackson. I live at 1950 Simmons Street. And I'm in Councilman Weekly's ward. But I came here today. I don't come here too often, but I had to come. I felt compelled to come. I have been to several Housing Authority board meetings. I went to them in the past and I stopped going years ago because of the way people were treated that went there. I've known Beatrice Turner for 20 years. And the way I met her is she was fighting for tenants' rights back when Arthur Sartini was the director of the Housing Authority. And back then we had Mary Plow that was a whistleblower and exposed the wrongdoings, and $2 million was left unaccounted for. No charges filed, nothing happened. What I want to stand here before you and say today is that there are some people that we know, and if I know them, I know you know them, that are scum. I call them scum. Because they will come before bodies such as yourselves and represent the people from the community, but the only way they'll come is if they get a little change. And when I say a little change, I'm talking about more than just some popcorn and hamburger money. Beatrice, Marzette Lewis, and myself, we have been out here and been activists for a lot of years. And that's how I know the good Councilwoman Tarkanian, because on that school district board, she's always been a person. We may not have always agreed, but she was always there. Anytime we called her, anytime we wanted to meet with her. But for that Housing Authority, it has to be people appointed that have those people in mind. That authority is not there for these egos and these people that are on different committees and they look good on a resume or paper. It's there for the tenants. And the thing that has happened to these tenants for all these years is a disgrace. It is a travesty. I have never lived in public housing, but I have compassion in my heart for people. Beatrice, when I met her, did not live in public housing, but she has a compassion. We don't get money, we don't ask for it, and I don't look for it, and I'm letting you know that. But Mayor, we must have it cleaned up. It's a cesspool. The things that have happened, and what I guess what really bothered me, made me compelled, is I remember reading all the terrible things in the paper about Miss Turner, and the fact that she was there being a troublemaker, and nobody wanted to listen to what she was saying. Well, you know what? When you're exposing dirt, people don't like what you're saying. But that's when you as the mayor, when you're appointing people, you have to look beyond the personality or the way the message comes and say, let me get to the bottom of it. Because a person such as this, just like me, there's no reason to come before you and be dishonest. I have never known her to give me bad information. We need to make sure that whoever is running this district, when I read through that report and I saw how money has been spent, that there was supposed to be, can I please just have a little more time, scattered housing purchased and it wasn't purchased, and money has been spent, the tenants are the ones that's suffering. There are units that are boarded up that have not been lived in for at least 2 years. That is a fact. Now someone will tell you Deborah's lying, but I'm telling you I'm not lying. They'll tell you that the units are filled because they get money for having so many units filled, and that is not true. You have managers that terrorize these tenants in these buildings. I know for a fact, because I know how many people have called me because they are troubled, and over the years I've called Beatrice, the troublemaker will go over there and make them move them out of this nasty apartment that the ceiling's falling in and everything else. We need somebody to run that housing authority. Get the person out that's in there. Get rid of the people that don't need to be on that board. We need to have somebody on there that really has the compassion to make sure that the tenants' rights are represented, that the taxpayers' dollars are spent the way they need to be spent. We need to make sure that it's cleaned up. And I want to just close by saying this, and I'll be through, Mayor. That in my time, you know, when we look at what happens in time, as a little girl asked my grandmother about significant things I heard about in history. Were you there? What did you think about the Depression? Did you hear Dr. Martin Luther King speak? What did you feel? I am so happy in my time. It was a big thing to me to see the wall of Berlin crumble. That was a significant thing, and I hope the Lord blesses me to live for my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren come to me and say, how did you feel about that? I know that if we can crumble the wall of Berlin, we can clean up the housing authority. You're said to be the happiest mayor, but the people of Las Vegas aren't the happiest people. And I'd like to see you, as our mayor, come forward and be the person that I know you to be and clean this mess up. Let us see it in our lifetime.
Thank you.
And
Anybody
get
else?
those 3 dysfunctional board members off that board.
Anybody else, please?
Barbara.
All right, well, thank you very much, everybody. We
Barbara.
appreciate your participation.
Get them 3 dysfunctional board members.